but I've been here for eons. I have fed species greater than you, and I have starved species greater than you. My oceans, my soil, my flowing streams, my forests, they all can take you or leave you. How you choose to live each day, whether you regard or disregard me, doesn't really matter to me. One way or the other. Your actions will determine your fate, not mine. I am nature. I will go on. I am prepared to evolve. Are you?
Climate change. It's real, it's serious, and it's up to us to solve it. In the last 2 decades, we've experienced 14 of the hottest 15 years on record. By 2050, drought and chronic water shortages could impact 1 billion people, while millions more will be at risk from coastal flooding. It can seem overwhelming, but there's reason for hope. If we embrace solar and wind power to their full potential, we can cut the world's yearly carbon emissions by 1/3. Already, Germany generates 27% of its electricity from renewables, with a goal of 80% by 2050. Denmark has shown it can produce more wind energy than it can use, and England is building the world's biggest offshore wind farm. Communities large and small are taking steps. A new public building in Mexico City has an exterior that breaks down air pollutants, erasing the effects of 1,000 cars each day. Paris installed street tiles that harvest energy from foot traffic. Other cities are paving streets with smog-eating concrete and sidewalks with recycled materials. Individuals can make a difference too, through the choices we make every day. If every American driver drove 10 miles less each week, it could eliminate more than 100 billion pounds of carbon from the air each year. New innovations are making important strides possible, and more are on the way, but we can't wait. Reimagining our world's energy future will take a shared sense of urgency from countries, companies, cities, and all of us. Working together, real change is possible. Learn more at natgeo.com/climate.
Shall we start? Welcome to our Green Convergence Kamayan para sa Kalikasan Forum. Our program will begin with our Zoom etiquette to be followed by our Philippine National Anthem. Also, we are currently live streaming at Green Convergence GCFB page. Thank you.
mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining Kamayan para sa Kalikasan Forum. Today, we are starting with a short special segment in honor of an esteemed member of our community who recently passed on to eternal life. We deeply mourn the untimely demise last May 7th of our dear friend, colleague, and immediate past president of Green Convergence, Dr. Carlo P. Garcia. First, let us pause for 1 minute of silence to pray for his eternal repose. After which, we invite you to join us in a brief meditative tribute in remembrance of Carlo.
For a new beginning, in out-of-the-way places of the heart, where your thoughts never think to wander. This beginning has been quietly forming, waiting until you were ready to emerge. For a long time, it has watched your desire, feeling the emptiness growing inside you, noticing how you willed yourself on, still unable to leave what you had outgrown. It watched you play with the seduction of safety and the gray promises that sameness whispered, heard the waves of turmoil rise and relent, wondered, what would you always live like this? Then the delight, when your courage kindled and out you stepped onto new ground, your eyes young again with energy and dream, a path of plenitude opening before you. Though your destination is not yet clear, you can trust the promise of this opening. Unfurl yourself into the grace of beginning that is at one with your life's desire. Awaken your spirit to adventure. Hold nothing back. Learn to find ease in risk. Soon, you will be home in a new rhythm, for your soul senses the world that awaits you.
Thank you, Miss Pauline Bautista, for reading the poem of John O'Donoghue as a send-off to Carlo on his new beginning. Let me tell you a story. Pauline had the privilege of having Carlo as a student on her first year of teaching a course on the church, politics, and economics related to ecology at the Loyola School of Theology, or LST. Immediately after this semester, they invited Carlo to join the board of LST's Sacred Springs Dialogue Institute of Spirituality and Sustainability, which, by the way, is a member of Green Convergence. By then, he was an esteemed alumni of their Certificate of Integral Ecology. She considers it a blessing, a gift, and a privilege to have been inspired by his gentle and effective presence, a walking Laudato Si student, whom she says, in effect, mentored us all while he was in our midst for a few years. She is most grateful, as we are, to have witnessed Carlos' love in action for environmental education. And that ends our special segment for today for Carlo. Actually, it wasn't mentioned in the tribute that Carlo was a co-moderator of Kamayan for about a year when he was vice president, and stopped only when he became president because he started giving the opening remarks. We sure are missing him. We're going to miss him some more. Good afternoon, isang makakalikasang pagbati at mainit na pagtanggap sa inyong lahat. This is the 395th monthly session of Kamayan para sa Kalikasan Forum, brought to you every third Friday of the month by Green Convergence and Kamayan Restaurant. I am your moderator, Marie Reyes Marciana of Green Convergence and Salika, and I am happy to introduce my co-moderator today, who is the newly appointed director of the Lasallian Institute for the Environment, or LIFE, of De La Salle, Philippines. At the same time, he is consultant of the Environmental Management Bureau of DNR and a trustee of Green Convergence. I call on Mr. Mark Tinaw. Good afternoon, Mark.
Good afternoon, Miss Marie. Maraming salamat for that kind introduction. And I'm sure Dr. Carlo would be happy seeing us from above, that we continue to fight for the environment and we continue to fight for the future.
That's right. Alam mo, Mark, hindi ako makamove on.
Correct.
Ang hirap. He was with us for a long
sentiment,
time.
Miss Marie, it's because he died on my birthday. So
I know that. I know
to
that.
remember for me.
Right, right.
But as what Mantash says, life goes on. And again,
right. And he's in a better place actually. Pero tayo lang yung nakakamiss sa kanya.
Correct. And we are now down to our 395th session. And today, I think we will be talking about quite sensitive topic, but I'm sure people would be interested to know about this topic.
Right.
Correct.
Kasi
and now,
malaki ang magiging effect niyan sa ating bansa kung sakasakali.
Correct. And now moving on to our next part, maybe can I request everyone to please kindly type in your name, your organization, and where you are right now to our chat box, so we would acknowledge you maybe later.
Okay, so that's it, Mark?
Yes, that would
Yeah, actually, we're in a hurry, no? We have
correct.
4 guests, and the time is limited. Before we move on, in case you missed the announcement, we are currently live streaming at the GC Facebook page, and the video recording will later be uploaded to the GC website and GC YouTube channel. And now, to give the opening remarks, let's welcome back an icon of the environmental movement who has opened this forum countless times as the former longtime president of Green Convergence and who is currently the convener of Ako Ang Bukas, a movement towards a quantum leap to climate neutrality by 2050, and a trustee of Green Convergence, Dr. Angelina Nina Galang.
Good afternoon. Isang makakalikasang araw sa ating lahat. Thank you for joining our 395th session of Kamayan. It's been a long journey. It's been a very satisfying journey. I see many regulars among our attendees as well as new ones. And I hope the new ones also become regulars. Remember, it's every third Friday of the month. Kamayan, like our other platforms, seeks to increase awareness of environmental issues. Green Convergence, after all, is a coalition of environmental groups and individuals seeking to improve the socio-economic conditions of our people while protecting the environment on which our lives depend. And therefore, I think all Filipinos, especially our members and allies, should understand the issues that are currently relevant and contribute their ideas, their thoughts, their preferences, their opinions to the national conversation so that we all own or we all take part in crafting the sustainable development of our country. The recent electrical outages that we experienced, as well as the news in mass media and social media, projecting the electrical deficiencies in the future, they surface the crisis that we might experience in the not too distant future. We experienced extreme heat during the outage because even electric fans could not run. And we shudder at the thought that the rising temperatures due to global warming will make the experience worse. Not to mention our industries, our commerce, our hospitals, which require electricity to function. The centrality of electricity in modern living is unquestionable. Thus, the search for developing our energy sources. It is of prime importance. We have a renewable energy law that should be pushing use of our natural resources, but our potential in these resources has not been actualized as it should have, as much as it should be actualized. Before I go on, I would like to clarify the term renewable. Strictly speaking, renewable means something that can be replenished. But in the context of our conversation about energy, it should be renewable in a useful length of time. That is, our renewable, renewing should be faster than the rate at which it is used up. For example, wood agricultural waste are renewable. And we can use them up, but then we can also produce them faster than we use them up. Unlike soil, for example, which is not an energy source right now, it's renewable, but if we take out 1 inch of topsoil, it will take 100 years to replenish. So it is not renewable in a practical sense. In a broader sense, renewable energy includes those sources which are endless. Thus, under this definition, we have solar, wind, tide, wave. They will always be around. We cannot use them up. But the criticism is that they are intermittent. They are forever, but they are not as constant as we need them to be. But of course, we know that they are clean. They do not have the pollution that is associated with other sources. On the other hand, we have the sources that the world now, to a big extent, relies on. These are the fossil fuels, coal, petroleum, and their derivatives. These are not renewable. And neither is uranium, which will be used up eventually, just like coal and petroleum. But these sources have the advantage of being constant once they are put up. They can be running 24/7, and they can be placed in wherever we want them placed. But you know the usual criticisms that they are polluting in one way or another, plus other disadvantages. But there are many other sources, and they each have their unique advantages and disadvantages. What is the best source or mix of sources for the Philippines? A new kid on the block is being offered to our officials, and this is the small modular nuclear reactors. What exactly is it? How does it differ from the large nuclear power plants? Another source being newly eyed is ocean tidal currents. If I'm not mistaken, that's how the phraseology. How great is its potential for our country? Ocean, tidal, and wave currents. Today, we are grateful that we have experts who will speak on these two new sources in specifically, and we will cover in this session the energy options in general. The energy issue is of vital importance for our developing country. All Filipinos should be engaged in discussions in order to lend our voices to the decisions being made by our government. And so we thank our speakers for taking time to enlighten us this afternoon. And I thank all of you for coming to what promises to be a very informative and exciting session. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Thank you very much, Nina. Buti hindi ka nagsasawa magbigay ng opening remarks.
My pleasure.
Yeah, about you've been doing it for about a decade already, I think. Mark, so wait. I was going to say, I will be very short.
Okay, I think Miss Marie is breaking her internet right now. Before we move on to our participants' guidelines, allow me to acknowledge our participants from Zoom. To begin with, I'd like to acknowledge Congressman Mark Coangco, House of Representatives, representing District 2 Pangasinan. Welcome, sir. And of course, good afternoon to Miss Jean Cornelius from PWU Manila, Miss Desi Tipan from De La Salle, Lipa, Batangas, Mr. Jose Presivil Ontolan Jr. from DOST PNRI, Miss Dang Manawis from Alpas, Pilipinas, or Pinas, Miss Rachel Baldonado from GPP/BPKMI, Mr. Alphonse Versosa from Dinalupihan, Bataan, Mr. Dennis Avenido from Liceo de Santo Tomas de Aquinas, Binyan, Laguna, Mr. Dan Pantaleon, PWU, Miss Judith Paredes, PWU, and good afternoon also from Mr. Gregorio Bituin from Salika, Mr. Ronald Rodil from Camarines Sur, Ms. Daniel Custodio Sampaloc from Agrarian Reform Beneficiaries Multipurpose Cooperative, Ms. Rosel Di Mayuga, Haribon Foundation, Marikina, and Mr. John Lloyd de la Cruz, Aliac, a fresh grad, and of course, Miss Maria Victoria A. Bayang from the House of Representatives, Miss Juliet Manlapas from Partnership for Clean Air, Miss Gail Certeza from Alpas, Pinas, and Mr. Steve Singson from RP for Anti-Poverty and Real Progress Organization. And what else? Who else? Mr. Calvin Kenneth Lopez from UNP Bachelor of Arts in Political Science, and Miss Judah Praise Urbano from UNP Bachelor of Arts Political Science, Vegan City, Ilocos Sur. Miss Marie? All right, I think wala pa rin signal ngayon si Miss Marie. Moving on to our participants' guidelines. To avoid distracting ambient noise, all participants are requested to keep your microphones on mute for the duration of the webinar, except during the open forum when participants are welcome to speak and ask questions. Meantime, you may use the chat box for comments, reactions, or messages. May I ask now the GC Secretariat? Nandiyan na po ba si Miss Marie? Miss Mabeth?
Wala pa po.
Wala pa rin po. Okay, I think I can give now the description or the three-part program flow. As a customary practice of Green Convergence, we usually divide our program into three parts. Of course, number one, first part would be our presentation or the presentations of our speakers and invited guests, to be followed by collecting the questions and comments from our participants, and followed by the third part, where our speakers and guests would be allowed to answer all the questions or the inquiries that the participants gave earlier. Okay. I think we can now move on to our first part. Ms. Tessa, would it be okay to start our part one?
Yes, let's continue. Start.
Yes, Ms. Tessa, sorry.
Yes, Mark, let's start already with our speakers.
All right, thank you. To talk about the first part, modular nuclear plants for the Philippines, our first speaker for this afternoon is the Director of the Department of Science and Technology, Philippine Nuclear Research Institute, or PNRI. He has helped guide the National Disaster Mitigation Program, Project NOAA, and has helped produce top geologists in the Philippines. Please welcome our speaker for this afternoon, Dr. Carlo Arcilla. Dr. Carlo.
Thank you. Yeah, let me see. I need to share my presentation. Thank you. So I suppose you can see the presentation. First, thank you for inviting me to this forum. And I'd like to talk about nuclear power because it's been in the news recently. So I said, but in the Philippines, one of the problems with nuclear power is the negative perceptions about nuclear. Many times we talk about nuclear, what comes to mind to many people is bombs. And so you already have an obstacle in explaining the technology. And it doesn't help that many of the movies, including the Maverick bestsellers, the bad guys are nuclear. And you have TV shows like Chernobyl, many where nuclear is demonized. But again, thank you for pointing out the emergency facing us of global warming, climate change. I'm a geologist by profession, and I know how important climate change has been in the history of the Earth. And in fact, if you look at the global warming models, they're suggesting that 1.5 degrees will really cause a lot of problems. And the cause of air pollution has been millions of deaths every year. And this is already well known. I will not dwell on this. But if you look at the world's electricity generation, and this only to 2015, but this in absolute terms, that we're still dominated by fossil fuels, which emit carbon dioxide. And fortunately, there is the red band here, that's nuclear, that's 10%, and hydro. And fortunately too, in the next years, the solar, wind, as mentioned before, will increase and should increase. We welcome the increase of renewables in the energy mix. But as you can see, there's still a lot of fossil fuels in the mix of the world. NASA compiled a picture of the Earth at night, and then you can see that the energy distribution in the Earth is not democratic. From the east to the west, so Japan is highly lighted. Philippines, madilim tayo. But all of the bright areas on Earth have nuclear power. Nuclear power provides 10% of the world's electricity. And so I hope this will help dissuade that some of the misconceptions that nuclear is bad for the world. And if you're talking about climate change, nuclear power is the leading low carbon source of electricity in advanced economies today. Of course, we will welcome wind, hydro, and solar and other renewables, but as of the present time, nuclear is actually the top. And interestingly, from other sources, if you look at this, what are the safest and cleanest source of energy? The most unsafe and dirtiest ones, of course, on top of there is coal and oil, natural gas, but wind, solar, nuclear energy, and hydro are actually safest and the cleanest. And nuclear actually is the safest energy source. You might not want to believe this, but you can double check this, because with the 440 nuclear plants in operation, there have been very few deaths that have been attributed to the wreck. A most important thing about nuclear is that it is the most energy dense source. So 1 gram uranium is equal to about 3 tons. And nuclear has about almost 4 million times more energy than natural gas, gasoline, coal, and wood. I would say even including and wind and solar. This because nuclear comes from the splitting of atoms and from the famous equation of Albert Einstein, 4 million times, because most of the mass of the atom resides in the nucleus. If there's a mass change of 0.1%, that energy is a lot, okay? But so how to contain such immense energy has been demonstrated by more than 60 years of nuclear power technology. And not to use nuclear power is to ignore a huge amount of energy source without carbon emission. It has nuclear waste. I'll talk about nuclear waste later on, but it's the amount of nuclear waste is manageable. But this is it. You cannot ignore nuclear power if you're going to discuss climate change. 1 pellet of that's 1.5 tons of coal. Let me talk very briefly about what reactors are. So reactors, what happens there is that you have a reactor vessel, and that's where the nuclear reaction is. It heats up the water, and the water runs a turbine. This is called a pressurized water reactor. This is most of the nuclear power plants in the world have this system. So water is pressurized again from boiling. So it's a very simple, very straightforward system. But now, interesting, if you look at this, what is this? There's a building on top of it that's called the containment structure. The Western designed nuclear plants have a containment structure so that if there's an accident, all the accidental materials are inside the plant. An older type of reactor, which is the same as like Fukushima, is called the boiling water reactor. The big difference here in this case is that the water being used in the reactor vessels also runs a turbine. So there's a lot more radioactivity in BWR reactors. These are still in operation. So, but nuclear power has started many years ago in the 50s, and right now in the 2020s, we are now in generation 3 nuclear power plants. So it has become safer and more efficient over time. What people don't know, though, is that the first application, true application of nuclear power, was in nuclear submarines. The reactors were put inside a nuclear submarine. This is the typical US Nautilus, 1955, and then the Russian one with 2 reactors. And then for 200, almost like 500 nuclear submarines, which is basically equal the amount of nuclear power plants in the whole world. And what is more unsafe? You're inside a submarine, miles underneath the ocean, and you're sleeping beside a reactor. That technology was transferred on land. In the US, it was pioneered by Admiral Hyman Rickover. The most important thing with nuclear, aside from the energy density, is the second thing I'd like you to remember, is called the capacity factor, or its availability. Nuclear is very consistent. Once you turn it on, it's available 90% of the time. Okay, geothermal, which the Philippines is number 2 in the world, is also very good, 75%. So if you look at this, the top, nuclear, geothermal, natural gas, hydropower, we have all of these. Now, wind and solar, which we have plenty, have this disadvantage that they're only available at best 30% of the time. So which means that 70% of the time, if you have wind and solar, there must be a backup. And the backup cannot be batteries. Batteries are only storing. They don't create energy. And the backup now for wind and solar is basically coal. And it's not quite good. So nuclear can back up wind and solar. So this is very important. Now, let's look at the greenhouse gas emissions of energy sources. If you look at this, you can see that really coal, natural gas have high emissions, but nuclear is the lowest. It's even lower in emission than wind and photovoltaic and solar. You can see the 6.4 versus 87. It's almost like an order of magnitude lesser. And in fact, this is from the American Science Academies. If you want to meet climate targets, you have to ramp up nuclear. The IEA said by 2050, you must increase it by 98% or 100% of the IEA, or even some, by Bloomberg, 1000%. So this is how important nuclear is, because there are no emissions. It's most important. In fact, if you stopped nuclear power, the CO2 emissions in the world will be increased by 10%. In the Philippines, solar is welcome, but it has one issue that has to be resolved. We are not like Saudi Arabia. We are not like, parts of the United States where there are deserts. 1 megawatt of solar requires 1 hectare flat land, and that will mean that it might compete with agriculture. So that's the issue here. So an important message here is that it's not nuclear versus renewables. People tend to pit one versus the other, because what is really important is a combination of gas, nuclear power, and renewables to provide an energy mix at acceptable costs. So they should help each other. This is our graphs that shows cost and stability for power generation. The x-axis decreasing stability from left to right. So you can see solar and wind are on the right side. They're not very stable, and then increasing cost on the top. Now, water is very cheap. Natural gas was cheap, but it's become expensive now because of the Russian war. Coal is cheap. Nuclear is expensive compared to coal because of the initial costs, but solar is almost the same. But once you start putting batteries like with wind is cheap, the costs increase. Now, how much material do you need to have this power? Increasing area needed. Hydro, you need huge areas to have hydro because of the dams, the flooded areas. Solar and wind, as I said, 1 megawatt to produce 1 megawatt needs 1 hectare. And then, of course, the increasing material throughput. Coal is not all burnt and oil. So here, nuclear is an advantage. So let's summarize that. No greenhouse gas, condensed form energy security, but people need to be assured of its safety. There are currently almost 450 nuclear power plants in operation, 55 under construction. The one that's constructing most nuclear plants in the world is China, but mostly for its own consumption. But America has almost 100 nuclear plants. Please take note of that. America has about 92 operating nuclear plants, supplying 20% of its electricity. And their nuclear plants average 60 years. And they're going to extend them by licensing to about 80 years. Most American nuclear power plants are even older than our unused Bataan nuclear power plant. So if nuclear is unsafe, why does America allow nearly 100 nuclear plants to operate? Of course, there have been disasters, and there's little time to discuss, but if there are questions, I'll address that. But the most spectacular disasters are Chernobyl and Ukraine in 1986, and Fukushima in Japan. And let me just talk briefly about Fukushima in Japan. And this was a magnitude 9. People said that thousands died here. That's not true. Thousands died in Fukushima because of the tsunami. Okay, but what the tsunami did was to flood the cooling system of the Fukushima nuclear plant, which caused the meltdown. Had the cooling systems of the Fukushima nuclear plants were at a higher elevation, the nuclear accident would not have happened. And all the nuclear plants in the world know that already. So they have done root cause analysis, and they will avoid that problem. There are accidents in nuclear, and that cannot be denied. It's actually compiled. There's an International Nuclear Regular Event Scale, INS, that shows that, but the most significant ones are these two, Chernobyl and Fukushima. That can be prevented because we know why they happened. The reactors are being built. The most numbers one are being actually built by Russia, but they have problems now because of sanctions. China is building some, South Korea is building, and France is building, but the SMRs, only 2 are under construction. China's ACP-100 and KM-25, surprisingly Argentina. Okay, next slides come from Chung Yang Kiao of Singapore. Interestingly, Singapore is not having nuclear, but they have not ruled out nuclear power. So what they've been doing is studying the best technologies, so that if ever Singapore goes nuclear, they will know the safest, because they cannot afford a meltdown because they're so small. Here are examples of SMRs for near-term deployment. Our president, Bongbong Marcos, was in the US, and a company there called NuScale offered the possibility of having nuclear, but the NuScale here has only received the certification. The one in operation, it's a high temperature gas cooled small modular reactor. It's actually in China. The HTGR, designed by Tsinghua University, and under construction is the one in Argentina, KREM, and the one in China again, ACP-100, which is in Hainan Island. So China is quite advanced in nuclear. I'll skip this. It's a snapshot of advanced nuclear systems. Now, what is with the small modular reactors? Basically, they have, like for this PWR, or the NuScale model, they are pressurized water reactors, but what they've done is made things smaller, and they put everything into one vessel. The reactor core, the steam generator, pressurizer, everything is in the vessel. So it means that there's a much higher level of safety. A passive system, for example, it will not depend on external power or operator during an accident. It's a walk-away system, unlike the Fukushima or even the Chernobyl systems. If there's an accident, the operator will walk away and it will turn off by itself. So, and it's small enough, it can fit. It's manufactured it will be manufactured in the plant, and then fit in a truck and shipped to the site. This is important because most of the cost of nuclear power is spent on the construction on site. The inspections will be done on site, so it will also shorten the time to construct nuclear power plants. All the inspections will be done on site, and they will be placed in the receiving countries. It will be underground, okay? And it will be, once they reach there, it will be basically plug and play. So China is building its own. It's almost completed, the ACP-100. The NuScale is still to be built. Russia's built and it's now operating. It's built on a ship. It's expected to be one of a kind. And then South Korea is also going to developing its own SMRs. There are actually about 80 SMR designs, but they will not be coming on stream for at least about 10 years. Okay, and most of them will be based on the PWR technology. A very interesting, in my opinion, is the high temperature gas cooled reactor, because this is really quite different from the operating ones. The fuels are forming spheres, and these allow the nuclear to have very high temperatures. So which means that the high temperatures allow this kind of systems to actually, number one, not have meltdowns, and then number two, to produce even hydrogen gas. So if people want hydrogen, this is the nuclear power plant to produce it. It's a walkaway system too. Okay, but who's built something like this? It's China. Their HTGRs are not connected to the grid. I think 2 years ago, and they are fine-tuning its performance. The American model is still only designed, the XE100, and then it will take time. Now, this is what I meant earlier, that nuclear and renewables can form a very nice partnership, because both of them do not emit carbon dioxide and will be very important for the climate change. So they can provide constant power, green hydrogen production, even desalination. Very interestingly, UAE, which is an oil-rich country, has constructed 4 brand new large nuclear power plants, and they will be using it for power and desalination. They're going to sell their oil and gas where they can get more money. Even Saudi Arabia, the world's oil-richest country, is going to build nuclear power plants. But to my mind, and I got this idea from Professor Chung of Singapore, the real game changing is that if you can make that HTGR small enough, so that if you have a coal plant, there are thousands, maybe 10,000 coal plants all over the world right now. If you can just replace the boiler with an HTGR, you will be able to not use coal, but all the remainders of the plant can be used. This is the true game changer if they are able to develop a small HTGR. And because if it's standardized, you don't have to destroy those coal plants. You don't use coal anymore. You use a small HTGR. Let's talk about the Philippines. The problem with the Philippines is this: half of our energy comes from coal. We have very small solar and wind. We need to increase solar and wind. I think, and I'm happy that our DOE is actually promoting solar and wind. Okay, but we have also renewables. We have 20% renewables, and much of that comes from geothermal and hydro. We are number 2 in the world. If we had a lot of geothermal and hydro, we don't need nuclear power. But the geothermal producing volcanic places are already maxed out. So the discoveries will only be about 100 megawatts, but then the demand is about 10, 12,000 megawatts. Hydro, we are archipelagic, you cannot flood everything. Now, our Malampaya gas, which is in the West Philippine Sea, is running out. It's been running out for 5 years, and we have to be drilling around it to extend its life. I think DOE is also doing that. The best replacement for this is nuclear energy, in my opinion. Although there are plans to replace the Malampaya gas with imported liquefied natural gas. That's why the LNG terminals are being built by the big power players right there in Batangas. But it's still going to be emitting CO2. So remember this electricity mix of the Philippines. And the worst part is if you go to the islands not connected to the grid, they're almost all oil-based, and they have the most expensive electricity. So those people who have the isolated islands, I'm from Catanduanes, we have the most expensive power. So why nuclear for the Philippines? Because of very expensive electricity rates, the highest in Asia. And as I said, 50% of our coal comes from, our energy comes from coal, 90% is imported from Indonesia. Indonesia controls our electricity problem more than China with their grid. It's really, if Indonesia stops selling coal, we will have serious issues. And then the Malampaya is depleting, so which means about 70% of our base load is under threat. we can provide baseload backup for intermittent renewables. We should ramp up the renewables. And I'm glad someone's talking about renewables later on, but renewables will need a backup. But the most important reason why we consider nuclear is that the median Filipino family, which has a refrigerator, pays something like 1,500 to 2,000 pesos a month. And if they take home 20,000, it's 10% of the take-home pay for electricity. If you use this metric, we are really expensive in terms of power. In China, it's less than 1%. So this is the reason probably why there was a survey done by DOE in 2019, 79% of the Philippine population supports nuclear power, 79%. So for those who oppose nuclear, please take note of this, that the majority of the Filipinos actually support nuclear power because of the high power costs. Now, what about LNG? This ship was 10 million in 2020. Even before the Ukraine war, it already shot to 281 million. It's even more expensive now. We will have to be competing with countries like Japan to buy this. So it means that if we're going to be using LNG, electricity will even become more expensive. Okay. Now, what happened before President Duterte stepped down? He signed the National Position on Nuclear Energy. This is an important document saying that the Philippines is open to nuclear power. And the current president has also said in his persona that nuclear power is important. The two presidents want nuclear power. In the Congress, a special committee on nuclear power was suggested and approved, proposed by Congressman Sandro Santos, and the special committee is chaired by Congressman Marco Wang, who I believe is present here, and under whose term the nuclear law, which will regulate nuclear power and ionizing radiation, is proceeding smoothly. Hopefully, it will pass the final reading within the month. Now, PNRI, we're doing our share. In order to understand and operate nuclear power, you must understand how neutrons operate. And you can only do that in a research reactor. We have an old research reactor that was inactive. We created a new, smaller one using the fuel. And last year, and actually also last month, we licensed it. That's a small, Philippine-made, Philippine-designed research reactor. It was vetted and tested. It's now operational. I'm very proud of this. And this was designed mostly by Philippine nuclear scientists. Many of them are women. Now, can Philippine geology safely host nuclear power plants? Because we have many earthquakes. These are epicenters from PBOX. We have the Taal volcano eruption. We have many disasters in the Philippines, 20 a year. Volcanoes, tsunami, earthquakes, floods, landslides. And the worst part of all are some politicians and oligarchs. You know who they are, because they are the ones, they're the worst. I don't have to explain. Now, these are active faults in the Philippines. The Philippines is not covered by faults, as you can see. And even the Bataan nuclear plant, there's no fault there. This is from PBOX. I'll say a few words about the Bataan nuclear power plant, which has survived earthquakes. This has survived the 1990 earthquake and the volcanic eruption of Mount Pinatubo, the next volcano after Mount Natib. It was constructed as a reaction to the OPEC oil embargo of 1973. This is the first nuclear power plant in Southeast Asia, but was not operated on because Chernobyl erupted, and the government of Corazon Aquino said it was unsafe because they didn't understand the difference between the Chernobyl nuclear power plants and the Western plants. Very big difference. And then and also they said that and these are some facts about the Bataan nuclear plant. The dominant reason why it's not operated is that they say it's built on a dormant volcano and the fault. And this has been the reason being given why the plant was mothballed. But the fault and the volcano at BNPP are the greatest misinformation about nuclear in the Philippines. We've done some studies on this. I don't have the time to do that. Is there a fault? There's no fault there. I'll just show you one example. We have radon gas testing. This is the data from active West Marikina Valley fault, and that's the data from BNPP. There's no fault on the plant. And you can check this. You can check our data on this. And then what about the volcano, Mount Natib? This is Pinatubo and then Taal Transit. You see there are earthquakes beneath the Pinatubo and Taal. There's none beneath Mount Natib. It's not an active volcano. But here it is, South Korea, is trying to offer to start the nuclear plant. Why? Because when the plant was constructed in 1980s, there were three sister plants. South Korea had one, Slovenia had one, and Brazil had one. Those three sister plants are running almost 40 years safely and very profitably. And this is a slide that I hope everybody remembers. If we did operate Bataan nuclear power plant, the nuclear fuel would fit inside a jeepney, and the importation cost will be 30 million US dollars. Will last for 18 months or 1.5 years. But if it were a 620 megawatt coal plant, the coal you would need will be 50 Panamax ships. The Panamax ship is 50,000 tons. The importation cost will be 800 million US dollars at least. Kailangan pa bang i-memorize yan? Now, these are the nuclear plants similar to the BNPP that are still running. South Korea has now 24 nuclear plants, and they started their nuclear program the same time as us. They have half our electricity rates. And Slovenia, I took this picture myself, has one. And the closure of the plant was very painful economically for us. It was the single largest debt item in the Philippines, and we were paying $180,000 per day up to 2007 just in interest payments. And this resulted in crippling power failures in the 1990s with untold economic losses, forcing the hand of the leaders that came, especially Ramos. He opened the floodgates to a maze of independent power supply, which is the main reason why our power is very expensive and is under control of only a few families. Professor Joseph of Ateneo did an interesting paper last year. This is the GDP on the second column of the Philippines, actual. In fact, you see that our economy contracted. He said that had we opened the plant, it would have been a very different Philippines. He would have been the counterfactual GDP growth rate. Okay. Now, what about the waste? Because nuclear has waste, which will last for 10,000 years. The way to deal with nuclear waste is to keep it out of human civilization contact for the next 10,000 years. And the best way to do this are deep boreholes, which we have the technology because we already have geothermal drills which drill up to more than 2 kilometers. So first, you get an isolated island, drill the boreholes and put the waste inside them, which are not too many anyway, and then place a material called bentonite as a buffer. Because bentonite's crystal structure has a negative layer that will absorb uranium as it passes through, and it's as if the uranium didn't exist. Then you will have disposed of that. It's important that we have the methodology for waste disposal before we start a nuclear power program. And here are examples of that. You can make the holes horizontal, and you would actually see that even after 10,000 years, that it will have no effect on the surface. An island like this could be made to handle all of the waste, a small island. Electricity consumption is positive development. The Philippines is here in the red star. If we operate the nuclear power plant, we would be probably here in the blue and the green. Why do I say this? The Daya nuclear power plant built in the fishing village in Shenzhen, China, was built to support Hong Kong's electricity. Now, the fishing village exceeds Hong Kong in GDP. This is a picture of South Korea and North Korea at night. You can see a very big difference. And this is the electricity in Korea, 1980 when it started, and then the exponential rise. We would have been, I'm not sure if it would be a Korea, but we would have much more manufacturing place had we operated a nuclear plant. The most important challenge is how to harmoniously integrate nuclear with renewables, because electricity must have electricity buyers. And SMR ownership should be shared with electric cooperatives. Wag naman doon lang sa oligarchs ulit. Because otherwise, electricity costs will not be going down. So Japan is restarting its nuclear plants because the cost of power has increased. And even Finland, which is actually a green party, has turned around. And they're building the first nuclear waste disposal site. Even Germany, which has decided to phase out nuclear, is finding a quandary because their gas supply from Germany has been cut off, and their nuclear has stopped, but they cannot restart it because their personnel have retired. And they're still 50% coal, and they're even reopening coal mines. So that's all. And then if there are students here, I'd like to announce that we have openings for scholarships for nuclear science and engineering. If you get accepted to any university in the world, you email me and then we'll find the money for you. Thank you very much for listening.
All right, maraming salamat, Doc Carlo Arcilla. Meantime, sit back po muna, Doc Carlo. I'm sure we have questions bubbling in our mind right now. And for our participants, just keep your questions for later. Once again, maraming salamat po, Dr. Carlo. We now move on to our next topic. While Dr. Carlo shared about the mechanisms of modular nuclear plants or nuclear plants in general, we will now be talking about the safety of nuclear power plants. To talk about it, we have invited a speaker from Greenpeace Southeast Asia. He is also a climate and energy campaigner and a volunteer in Freedom from Death Coalition and has supported major campaigns and activities of FDC focused on climate justice and climate finance from 2009 up to present. Please welcome our next speaker, Mr. Kevin Yu.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting Greenpeace again for this forum, and thank you for my fellow speakers who will talk about a very important discussion for today. And thank you again for Dr. Carlos Arcilla for that wonderful presentation. And I'll be sharing my screen. All right, so good afternoon again, everyone. So in my presentation, we'll be showing our analysis and some of the aspect of nuclear energy globally in terms of cost and in terms of safety concerns. And some of the slides here were taken out already because it was presented by Dr. Carlos Arcilla. And I will also be tackling some of the common concerns and discussion in terms of nuclear energy in the Philippines. So nuclear has been a hot topic, not only during this time, for decades already. As mentioned by Dr. Carlos Arcilla during the previous Marcos administration, it was a very highly debated discussion to a point that it was a mothballed for political and technical concerns as well. So globally, we think that in terms of what the nuclear energy or industry can provide in terms of the climate crisis. So we need a very fast pace of transition globally. Because in terms of the crisis, that means we need to transition immediately, especially within this decade. Nung nakaraang araw lang, I think 2 days ago, the World Meteorological Organization mentioned that 1.5 degrees can temporarily occur in the next 5 years. So the impacts are already here. And to mitigate that, that means that we need to transition further into renewable energy. So in the report of the IEA or the International Energy Agency, so they provided the net zero by 2050 roadmap. I think this was released 2 years ago, 3 years ago. So they stated that by 2050, 90% of electricity generation should come from renewable energy sources, particularly coming from solar and wind, counting to 70%. They also mentioned that 10% will come from nuclear energy. But based on our estimates, that would require for the nuclear industry to construct around 25 to 30 new reactors annually to at least just maintain this 10% mix by that time. I believe around this time, it's around that energy mix as well. And we also need to maintain all existing fleets of reactors. Apologies for that. In terms of reducing emissions, that means that it can contribute in reducing around less than 5% globally in terms of carbon reduction. So in order for it to be more effective in terms of reducing global carbon emissions, it should have a bigger share, no, bigger than 10% globally. But based on our estimates, it will only have that small impact in terms of mitigating greenhouse gas emissions. And for the Department of Energy, they mentioned in their previous statements, and I believe in the Philippine Energy Plan as well, that they are planning to provide around 2.5 gigawatts for nuclear energy in our energy mix. So that will mean it will be less than 30% of our current energy mix if that comes into fruition. So one of the important discussion, will it really reduce electricity cost in the Philippines? So as Dr. Carlos Arcila mentioned, it has that possibility, but in the context of the Philippines, it will be quite different. Globally, if we look at the cost, no, per energy source, this is the levelized cost of energy. So ito po yung they accounted all costs in terms of construction, operation, and even some aspect of each energy source. So this is the 2023 LCOE by Lazard. So it's an independent think tank, and it shows here that solar, it has many forms of many types of installation, rooftop residential, which is quite the most expensive because it will come from the electric consumers, no? So 117 to 282. But the cheapest will be the utility scale. It's around $24 to $96. But if you look at conventional sources, gas combined cycle is around $39 to $101. And if we look at coal, it's around $68 to $166. And nuclear globally, it's around $141 to $221 in terms of unsubsidized cost of dollars per megawatt hour. In terms of capital cost, it has the same outlook, actually putting nuclear as the most expensive. The capital cost will be around per kilowatt hour, it's around 8,475 to $13,000 dollars. Compared to other sources, even at coal, it's around 3,200, and if you look at solar, it's 700 or 1,075 in terms of utility scale. Now, in terms of small modular reactors, one company that goes into mind that have showed their interest in investing in the Philippines is NuScale. There's some data that shows already that in terms of their track record, it's quite problematic at this point. Because right now, in terms of their designs, there's no commercially available design of NuScale as of the moment. Last year, IEFA, Institute for Energy, Economic and Financial Analysis, released a report, no, pointing out that NuScale, in partnership with Utah Association Municipal Power System, announced that they will increase their pricing to $89 per megawatt hour, which is a 53% increase from its original price tag of around $58 per megawatt hour. So this price comes also with a huge federal tax subsidy from the US government amounting to $4 billion. So these are subsidized prices, and yet it continually increase even though it's not yet operational. In terms of small modular reactor, we've seen that some of the existing power plants have in a way have been overpromising in terms of its timeline, particularly this floating vessel right here. It's the academic Lomonosov. It's around 70 megawatts in terms of its capacity, and it took them around 10 years for them to construct this. No? And as we've seen a while ago, there are many designs, but most of those designs are not yet commercially available. And the one design, the ACP 100 was mentioned also, which is still under construction in China. In the US, that will be the design from a new scale, which just has been licensed, but all other designs are still in research and developmental phase. In terms of nuclear waste, it was showed a while ago there are technologies, but let's just quote one of professor from John Hopkins University. This was a way back in 1959. Professor Abel Wallman mentioned that the toxicity in general terms, both radioactive and chemical, is greater by far than any industrial material with which we have it, dealt in this or in any other country. Dispose of waste of almost every industry in the United States by actual conversion into harmless material. This is the first series of waste of any industry where that kind of disposal is non-existent. So by nature, nuclear waste is harmful. That's why it needs to be put put underground, and no human should be able to contact it because of its nature. So it's more of storage, but in terms of actually making the waste safer, it will take thousands of years before it lose its potency, or even reach its half-life. Now, if we look at the current initiative in Congress right now, there's the House Bill 7049, which I believe just passed the first reading. It states there under, let me see, Section 41, Paragraph 2, that there will be an acquisition of around 200 hectares of land for the national low and intermediate level waste management site. So that will be the site for the waste management. But I I also believe I wasn't able to see any mitigation measure for high level waste management site. So this is only tackling the low and intermediate waste site. No? But in terms of selecting this site, how many sites will this be all over the country? It's not stipulated in the bill. So just to give you a perspective, how big is 200 hectares? That's almost as big as the city. This is Bonifacio Global City, which is around 240 hectares. So you can just imagine the scale in terms of the storage that will be needed for waste, nuclear waste, if a nuclear power plant finally operate in the Philippines. So as a global organization, we studied nuclear for a very long time, and we've made several publications in terms of our findings. So this is one, the global crisis of nuclear waste. And I will just be showing some of the findings in this report. It shows that escalating costs and enormous uncertainties can be seen in nuclear waste. So globally, it can be estimated that there's around 370,000 metric tons of heavy metals of spent fuel has been produced since the advent of civil nuclear power production, of which 120,000 has been reprocessed. There is now a global stockpile of around 250,000 tons of highly radioactive spent fuel spread across 14 countries. The use of nuclear power to generate electricity over the past 6 decades has created a nuclear waste crisis for which there is no solution on the horizon, aside from storing it into an isolated area, but which will require the safe storage and management, and ultimately final disposal over hundreds to thousands of years. Case in point, apologies for that. France, these are the cost, no, of managing nuclear waste storage. The sorry. The Court of Auditors calculated total gross cost amounting to 32 billion euros as of 2013, including 26 billion euros for maintaining such facility. The cost for the Sigeo project for the deep geological disposal of high-level waste and medium waste is estimated at 25 billion euros. Value confirmed by the cost set by the government in 2016 is around 35 billion euros. In Japan and in the US, it will have a similar cost. The cost for Japan was estimated by the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry in 2011 to be around 29 billion euros. In the US as well, it's around 100 billion euros for the disposal of 70,000 metric tons of commercial power reactors. Spent fuel at the Yucca Mountain site, no, with more than 112,000 tons of spent fuel projected. As reactors continue to operate, these costs will also significantly increase. In terms of reprocessing, so these reprocessing plants are facilities that basically reprocess some of the spent fuel of nuclear reactors. But we've seen these facilities having some closures, particularly in the UK. In Downry, for instance, in the far north of Scotland, which was the site for the UK's first fast reactor research center, is now being decommissioned. This will cost around 192 million pounds in the financial year of 2018 and 2019 alone. The total discounted cost for decommissioning Downry is expected to be 2.7 billion pounds. More recently, this is in Sellafield. It is also reprocessing plant. This is now in northwest England. It was the operation ended around July 17 last year. So this is a thermal oxide reprocessing plant which has been reprocessing oxide fuels overseas, particularly from Europe and in Japan. So an analysis by one professor from University of Greenwich estimates that the total bill for decommissioning, so they've stopped operating and now they need to decommission it. It would be around 260 billion pounds in succeeding years. Now, in terms of small modular reactors, there's this one recent report by Stanford University that they found the design. So they tried to analyze the existing designs of small modular reactors, and they found that the small modular reactors will actually exacerbate some the radioactive nuclear waste. So in their finding, they've shown that neutron leakages will be 9 times more compared to conventional nuclear power plants. To quote them, our results showed that most small modular reactor designs will actually increase the volume of nuclear waste in need of management and disposal by factors of 2 to 30 for the reactors in their case study. The study concluded that overall small modular designs are inferior to conventional reactors with respect to radioactive waste generation, management requirements, and disposal options. Again, going back to cost, for the Fukushima nuclear incident, in 2019, the Japan Center for Economic Research projected that the cost in terms of responding, managing, and the management in the succeeding decades, not decades, but during that time, was estimated to be around 35 to 81 trillion yen. So that's around 330 billion to 760 billion dollars in terms of the impact and the cost of maintaining and responding to the ongoing nuclear disaster in Fukushima. Ultimately, this will be paid by Japanese taxpayers because in their arrangement, the Japanese government will pay for this part of the damages. No. Meanwhile, at the same time, hundreds of legal cases have been filed by communities to TEPCO and the Japanese government, no? And they are seeking compensation for their losses. Now, if you look at the current bill right now being proposed in Congress, they've adopted a a section in the old law. So this is the um, adoption of Part 7 of the Energy Regulatory and Liability Act of 1968. So under Section 42 and 43, the nuclear operator is only liable for around $5 million. They will also not be accountable to the damages to the property and site of the nuclear plant. And this means, and the means of transportation for nuclear materials. So if you compare this to the actual cost and impact of previous incidents, this is quite minuscule, no? In terms of covering the actual nuclear disaster. For Section 52, it has an indemnity clause, whereas the government, if the company cannot cover the cost anymore, and if it's beyond the financial insurance coverage, it can provide indemnity that without exceeding an equivalent amount of $120 million. So these are just some of the measures within the existing bill in terms of their liability, the government's liability, and the nuclear operator's liability. That means that beyond this expense, it will be the people and the local government units possibly to pay for the cost beyond those amounts. In terms of our government track record, we have a bad record in terms of claiming liabilities from disasters, particularly the Mark Copper incident, which is a mining incident that happened almost 2 decades ago. Communities were only provided around 300,000 pesos individually after almost 2 decades. The ongoing oil spill, we don't have a proper response for oil spills. And can you imagine if we have an incident, what will be the response of our government? And liabilities are also unclear for such an incident. So later, this will be discussed, but I'd just like to point out that for the Philippines, we have a huge potential, and we think that this should be the priority in terms of expanding this, because based on the analysis of the Department of Energy and USAID, we have around 808 gigawatts of renewable energy potential across the country, near the grid already. So that means that we haven't yet fully utilized or even utilized a quarter of our energy potential that can be distributed, no? So that means that na-mention kanina yung mga oligarchs, renewable energy has this capacity to distribute energy generation, meaning people, individuals, household can contribute in generating electricity, which I don't think nuclear can have that kind of option for electric consumers for now. Last week, I was able to attend one of the reports released by PIDS, and they have an interesting conclusion in terms of what will be the time frame in terms of managing or operating a nuclear facility. So it states here that the government needs around 100-year time frame. No? So this is not an issue only by the current administration. This will be a concern, a problem, a financial burden in the next coming decades and centuries. The next generation will have to face these problems even beyond their lifetime, because nuclear management or response takes a long time and a very long commitment, and would require a lot of resources. So we think that nuclear energy is a Faustian bargain, meaning that although it tries to address, it has many answers for the energy crisis, as stated by Dr. Carlos Arcilla, but at the same time, it presents many problems that we will also encounter and need to address at the same time. So it provides baseload energy, but the exchange of for what? for safety, exposure, and the cost of nuclear energy will be enormous along the way, especially if there's a nuclear incident at the same time. So our analysis and recommendations, we have a lot. So here are some of the first assertion. The first one is that based on these findings, we believe that nuclear energy isn't cheap. No, proponents have left out the computation for the cost of decommissioning, waste storage, accidents, costs that LGUs, national governments, and the Filipino people will shoulder. And also, within our context in the Philippines, our generating sector is privatized. That means that the government cannot be involved in operating any nuclear facility. It should be the private sector. Maybe that is why that there are some calls to revise the current EPIRA law, but this is an ongoing issue as of the moment. And the problem there is that the cost for construction or other costs for operating a nuclear power plant can be eventually be passed on to consumers, which was done by the fossil fuel industry, from coal, from the natural gas. It's passed on to the consumers. That's why we also have one of the most expensive electricity in the region, if not the world. Nuclear energy purports to attempt to address some aspect of the Philippine energy crisis, but instead it will introduce new issues and problems that we never had. Nuclear importation, transport, nuclear disaster, centuries of managing nuclear waste, and decommissioning facilities. The entry of nuclear energy in the country will expose Filipinos to risks of nuclear energy with insufficient financial, technological, legal, and environmental guarantee and safeguards. Fukushima and Chernobyl are still suffering now and will deal with it for centuries. The climate emergency requires rapid decarbonization. Nuclear energy is too slow to transition away from fossil fuels for the Philippines and other countries. The Marcos presidency, given the long time frame for construction and operating a nuclear power plant, will not be there when a nuclear power plant will operate. The next administration and future generations will use nuclear energy and face its risks and consequences, and even pay for it eventually. There's just too much risk and cost and uncertainty with nuclear energy. And we also think that nuclear energy will take away some space that should have been centralized to renewable energy along the way. The best way forward is to utilize our energy available to us and focus with just energy transition to renewable energy. So thank you. That ends my presentation.
Mark, Marie?
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Kevin, for that presentation. I think Miss Marie is still
Yes, Mark, I'm already here. I'm so glad.
Go ahead,
But
Miss Marie.
I was muted. So thank you very much, Kevin, for shedding light on the controversial subject of the safety or lack of it of modular nuclear plants in the country, as well as the hidden costs and other dangers as demonstrated by the experiences in other countries. Now it's time to look at other possible sources to supply our energy needs. You know, we're already over time. We have 4 guests today. So as I said, we were supposed to have 20 minutes per speaker, but you know, sometimes when you have too much to say, it's hard to stop. So I would like to call on, I would like to apologize to Dr. Enano Jr. if we're going to listen to Dr. Dairit first, because he has to leave and we don't want to miss his talk. So I hope that'll be okay. Our next speaker is Dr. Fabian Dairit, as I've said, who has been teaching chemistry in the Ateneo de Manila University since 1983. He established the National Chemistry Instrumentation Center, when the first high-field Fourier transform nuclear magnetic resonance, or NIMR, spectrometer and high-resolution mass spectrometer, or MS, in the country were obtained in 1994 under the Engineering and Science Education Program. Outside the laboratory, he is also working on adding more volumes in the compilation of currently standardized traditional medicinal plants in the Philippines and in Southeast Asia. The first volume of the Encyclopedia of Common Medicinal Plants of the Philippines, to which he is a co-editor of, was published in 2015. Let us welcome Dr. Fabian Toby Dairit.
Okay, well, thank you for the generous introduction. Yeah, since time is short, I'll jump right into my presentation. Well, actually, I think the third speaker should have been talking about tidal energy. So after I'm going to touch on that, but maybe you can add to what I'm going to say. So I'll just, can you give me, yeah, okay. Okay, so the topic is nuclear energy the best sustainable option for the Philippines? So the previous speakers, of course, they talk about how great, well, nuclear energy might be, but the question is it really the best option for the Philippines? So that's what I'd like to talk about. Well, first, you have to admit that Dr. Patrick Moore, who was, I think, one of the founders of Greenpeace, is now saying that the green movement should accept nuclear energy, and that's Dr. Patrick Moore. And this is a recent article. It says, former Greenpeace director explains his support for nuclear energy. Now, what he says is that nuclear energy is a solution to global warming. So, to mitigate CO2 release, then nuclear energy doesn't release any CO2. And that modern nuclear energy is safe and reliable. And in fact, he does talk about the small nuclear reactors which were developed for nuclear submarines. But he really doesn't offer any solution to nuclear waste. I've listened to some of his presentations and articles, and he doesn't mention nuclear waste, which is really a major issue here. So, well, the cause of being repetitive. So what is nuclear energy? Well, of course, we have, we talk about nuclear energy. You have the Bataan Nuclear Power Plant, which is completed in 1984. Then you have the small nuclear, modular nuclear reactors, and these are nuclear fission reactors. Now, it's already said that the Koreans can rehabilitate a BNPP for about $1 billion. Now, that was built in 1984. It's like if you had a 1984 car, and unless you're into antiques, are you going to spend almost an equal amount to modernize it? And it's going to take more than 5 years to implement. So even though we agreed to do that, it won't be until perhaps 2030 that it will come on stream. And well, already mentioned, why isn't the private sector, this is such a great opportunity, why isn't the private sector just jumping into this opportunity? Now it would operate for about 70 years. So assuming that this whatever comes on stream in 2030, then that would operate until about 2300, and then it has to be decommissioned, and then you'd have about more than 1,000 years to store it. Now, the storage site that have been discussed is one in Finland, and that's a dry storage site. You can't store nuclear waste in a moist environment as we have in the Philippines. So I don't think you're going to find any such storage site in the Philippines. So there have been questions about recycling nuclear waste. In fact, that's there's a research doing that, but then fast breeder reactors. But then you have the risk of nuclear proliferation, and it's quite high investment to recycle nuclear waste. And then again, there's a very high cost of decommissioning, already mentioned. And they don't say who really pays for decommissioning and nuclear storage. If it's not going to be paid for by the operator, then it's really the people that are going to be paying for it. So if you're going to say that nuclear energy is cheap, then they should include the cost of decommissioning and nuclear storage. Now, interestingly, nuclear fusion is already knocking at our doors, and they said it's going to be viable by about 2050. And well, what nuclear fusion reactors are released is just helium and tritium. So I'm wondering whether they're pushing nuclear fission reactors as a closing out sale, because in another 30 or 40 years, you're going to have nuclear fission reactors. So I think that's something we should keep in mind, that, you know, maybe that's why they're so aggressive in pushing nuclear fission reactors. So why go nuclear when the Philippines is a better option? So there's the Philippines. You have a wide open sea to the right of the Philippines, or to the left when you look at the map. And well, of course, it's already been mentioned that geothermal energy, which was developed in the 1970s, comes from the Ring of Fire volcanoes. And actually, this is one of the contributions of Marcos Sr., that he had the foresight to develop geothermal energy. And that's something that, whether you agree with him, his politics or not, it was an intelligent decision for him. Now, the Philippines lies almost vertical, and you have the oceans passing through the Philippines. So the geography of the Philippines is such that it's ideal for tidal energy. And this is something that perhaps can be developed in the 2020s. So perhaps Marcos Jr. could consider this as his contribution to the energy leadership of the Philippines to develop or push more vigorously tidal energy. So just a quick introduction to tidal energy. Well, the tides are predictable because they depend on the motion of the moon around the Earth, and it versus the sun. So you have high tides, low tides, and the tides are very predictable. You can predict the tides 50 years from now. And so the tides don't stop. And so you can calculate how much energy you can get from the tides. And you have the global ocean currents. So there's that. And there are many ways to harness tidal energy. Now, I'm not an expert on tidal energy, but if you check that these figures just show the many types of technologies you can use to harness tidal energy, whether it's waves, whether it's well, they're different barges and so forth. Anyway, there are many technologies for harnessing tidal energy. And the Philippines has abundant sources of tidal energy. So if you look at this map, it shows you some of the straits wherein the current is very strong, and you can in fact harness tidal energy from those. Anyone who's some people, they take a boat to Polillo Island. It's very difficult to get there because the tides are very strong. So we should look at tides as really a source of energy. And we have a lot of sources of tidal energy. This is another map showing the motion of the tides crossing the Philippines. Now, there have been some publications describing the potential of the Philippines. This is an article by some researchers from the Institute of Civil Engineering, UP Diliman, numerical simulation of tides for the assessment of tidal in-stream energy in selected air sites in the Philippines. So this is not a comprehensive study, but just to show you, they did calculate from certain locations the ideal, what might be expected energy from the tides, and the cost of doing that, and how much the unit cost of energy might be. Here's a more recent study, February 2023, Marine Renewable Energy in the Philippines, Sustainable Energy from Ocean, Spaces, and Resources. And here they identify, I think, 7 or 8 specific places, but I'm sure there's more, where such tidal energy can be harnessed. Now, in many ways, the Philippines is like Scotland or the UK, because It's also a vertically, it's a vertical orientation, and the sea goes back and forth to North Sea and the Atlantic. So it's actually quite similar to the Philippines. We're also vertical, we're standing, and the seas go from the Pacific to the West Philippine Sea and back and forth. So we have that similarity. And so we have this tidal energy Scotland. They say Scotland is a world leader in the development and deployment of wave and tidal energy technologies. So Scotland is developing technologies to harness the resources that they have. So I think the point I'm making here is that tidal energy is it's not a resource that all countries have. So only selected countries which have the geography can take most advantage of it. And I think that would be true for the Philippines as it is for Scotland. And there are already available technologies. So this is a picture of one of the turbines that they have. So from Scotland to Portugal to Korea, several marine energy projects have achieved important milestones. You have tidal wave turbines can be installed underneath bridges. This one is in Derby, Northwest Australia. So wherever you have the sites where you build a bridge, in the posts, you could put turbines, and they can be of different sizes depending on the nature of the location. And you can have small scale turbines which make tidal energy accessible, affordable, and flexible. So when you talk about tidal energy, you're not just talking about big machines, you're also talking about small machines. So I'll just summarize nuclear energy versus tidal energy and the advantages of tidal energy. First of all, nuclear energy really does not give you energy independence because you have a long-term commitment to the nuclear vendor and to the fuel. So if you go nuclear, you're tied to who built your nuclear plant and who's supplying your fuel. Tidal energy gives you energy independence because it's abundant in the Philippines. It's actually the energy which we have. We don't have to buy it from anyone. Nuclear energy will redirect our meager S&T budget nuclear energy. As it is, the Philippines has a really small S&T budget. And if you build a lot of nuclear plants, you're going to eat from that budget and put it into training for nuclear energy, nuclear engineers and so forth. However, human resources are already available who can build tidal energy. And for this, you need the skills of civil engineers, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, actually electrical engineers, marine scientists. We actually have these human resources. Many of them are actually overseas. And if there are job opportunities, then they'll certainly come back. And there can be many job opportunities if you go tidal energy. It will take about 1 billion to refurbish the Bataan nuclear power plant for 620 megawatts. For smaller investment, you can get a bigger yield if you go tidal energy. And you get decentralized energy for small islands. You cannot, we have many small islands, small communities, and nuclear energy will just bypass them. However, if you can build small tidal energy turbines, you can actually provide decentralized energy for small islands. So this, in fact, is something which we can offer to small island communities all over the Philippines. Nuclear waste will last for 1,000 plus years. I don't know of any government that lasts 1,000 plus years. And of course, there's no waste generated for tidal energy. Nuclear energy requires high maintenance. Tidal energy will require moderate maintenance. Of course, there's still issues to address, but certainly the maintenance will be moderate. High cost of decommissioning. Tidal energy is modular and easy to replace. If it doesn't work or you get a better turbine, better design, you can replace it, but you can't replace a nuclear plant. There are many, many, many hidden costs. This has already been mentioned. So you go into nuclear energy, you don't know what else you're gonna pay for. We have the experience already with BNPP. It had a bill of so much, and then it ballooned about more than 5-10 times. tidal energy would be, because it's decentralized, it will be transparent and affordable. Nuclear energy is not a sustainable source of energy, so it's good while the supply of uranium lasts. And if many other countries build more nuclear power plants, then the supply of uranium will last even shorter. Of course, ocean waves will not stop, so it will always be there. Nuclear fusion will make nuclear fission obsolete. But for tidal energy, there are many technology improvements possible. Nuclear energy does not meet the criteria of the Sustainable Development Goals. For example, I mean, the original definition of sustainable development is that you don't leave problems for the next generation, but nuclear energy certainly will leave problems for the next generation. While tidal energy will meet several SDG criteria. And if we go nuclear, we will only be consumers. If we go tidal, we can be innovators and world leaders. So is nuclear energy the best sustainable option for the Philippines? So why go nuclear when the Philippines is a better option? And that is tidal energy. Okay, on that note, thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dairit. That's a really large food for thought. I mean, it'll take me a lot of days to digest everything that I've heard here today. Maski palagi ako nawawala sa internet. For some reason, I don't know why. But thank you, Dr. Dairit. I regret that people can't ask you questions because you have to leave, right?
Well, the thesis depends. It's the end of the semester, so students are defending their thesis.
I'm so sorry. Maybe we should have more sessions on this topic because it's interesting and it's important. And I'm sure many people would like to ask you questions, but I know you have to go, sabi 4:20 daw, so wala ka ng time to take in questions. So, but thank you very, very much.
Okay, thank you.
Pwede ba, Dr. Dairit, can we ask people who want to ask questions to put them in the chat box and we can send them to you?
Sure, yeah.
Pwedeng mong i-email yung sagot?
Yeah.
Di ba
well, I mean, there's a question about South Korea. Well, I mean, South Korea is a very different geography to the Philippines. So I wouldn't compare South Korea with the Philippines, at least not with respect to tidal energy.
Okay. So yes, thank you very much. So please, those who have really questions that can't wait, pwede niyong ilagay sa chat box. We will forward them to Dr. Dairit and he will accommodate your question by answering through email. Thank you very much, Dr.
Okay, thank
Dairit,
you.
again. Thank you so
thank
much.
You. Okay, thank you. All the best.
For being here. Yes, thank you. And now, we have the next speaker. We are fortunate, it's like I said, it's time to look at other possible sources to supply our energy needs. For this, we are fortunate to have as a resource speaker, a specialist in the engineering, economics, and regulation of energy systems. He works in the academe and conducts research in the area of energy engineering and policy. He is the director of the Center for Renewable Energy and Appropriate Technologies at Ateneo de Davao University and is acting chair of the Mindanao Renewable Energy R&D Center, a niche R&D center in the region supported by the Department of Science and Technology. He is an associate member of the National Research Council of the Philippines and has been named as one of the outstanding Asian science diplomats in 2021. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Nelson Enano Jr.
Okay. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Because I'm having problem an hour ago with my connection. Okay, I'll share to you my PowerPoint. So I'll try to do very quickly my presentation. So possible 5 minutes. Okay. So, but Professor Dewitt has already discussed some of the essential points of the presentation, so it should be easier for me. So I'm from MREC, and Mindanao Renewable Energy R&D Center. So from the name of my center, we advocate renewable energy. We believe renewable energy is really the key, for sustainability in our energy supply. Both it can provide our trilemma goals of affordability, of environmental sustainability, and also reliability. So we already have, before I proceed to marine and ocean renewable energy, I just really would like to highlight, or to emphasize that we already have the technology now. So in terms of solar and wind, these variable renewables, and also geothermal, and all those conventional renewable energy technologies are already in the commercial and mature level. So we can definitely just have the teeth to implement and to put them to have more integration of these renewable energy technologies. And then aside from these variable renewables, we should have storage facilities. So we have the technology already, but there's storage and also pumped hydro storage. So to deal with the intermittency of solar and wind, but we have a solution for that. So we think that renewable energy can linchpin these goals, reliability, affordability, environmental sustainability, and we don't and this also can afford solution to this interlinked problem in the sector. Like if there's problem in energy, what happens to the area of water, and also for food. So that nexus of energy, water, and food or agriculture, we have to look at that as well. So we know thermoelectric power plants are very much dependent on water for cooling, and therefore we would say at the first instance, that coal power plants, nuclear power plants are heavy on water. So we have to look at that as well. So it's not just that we provide solution on energy by increasing our capacity on electricity, but also look at the impact of increasing electricity by our chosen technology on the other sector. So mainly on water and others. Aside from the safety issue that nuclear energy is giving us. So now I'll quickly discuss this new technology on marine and ocean renewable energy, but focus on tidal energy. So marine basically is a broader categorization of these renewable energy technologies that use the marine space. So marine space ang ginagamit. So we have ocean renewable energy as well. So those are technologies that use the ocean as the resource for the production of electricity. So when we use wind energy conversion system and put them on the shore or ocean, they are already called marine renewable energy. They are not using the ocean as a resource, but they are using the space of the ocean or the marine. So that's why we call them marine renewable energy. The same for floating solar. When we put them on shore, we call them marine renewable energy. So both offshore wind and floating solar are mature and commercially available renewable energy and very ready to give us a sustainable energy. So in the area of ocean renewable energy, there is a plethora of technologies, from tidal energy, tidal barrage, salinity gradient, ocean thermal energy conversion systems, and many others. So I proceed to the next slide. So at MREC, we do research on renewable energy, and one of our area of focus is ocean renewable energy. We also have this another research track on concentrated solar power, in which we use the heat of the sun. We capture the heat of the sun to produce steam. And then we hybridize that with biomass to further elevate the temperature, and then produce electricity. And heat also can heat from the sun can also have many functions. It can even provide the needed hot water of coal power plants. So if we would like to have our existing coal power plants now to be more sustainable, as we have them until they are decommissioned. So later on, in some years from now, and there is moratorium for coal power plants, so we don't have them anymore in the future. But as we have them now, so we can have part of the hot water or that produce steam for coal power plants that come from concentrated solar power. Okay, so this is what I described. So this is the marine renewable energy, and then subset of marine renewable energy are ocean renewable energy technologies. So we have ocean current, tidal currents, tidal range or tidal barrage, waves, salinity gradient, and thermal gradient. So the most commercially available, the most advanced technology for ocean renewable energy is the tidal energy. So it's the technology that's settled for this technology, renewable energy technology, is the tidal energy. The horizontal axis, tidal turbine, that is the technology that has that's very near to commercialization. So it's just like the wind turbine that is being placed under the sea. So, but because the sea has 1,000 higher density as compared to air or to the wind, that's why it's smaller in scale. In the water, it's like for electric fan. So small scale, what we are envisioning are small but many tidal turbines, and under the sea, under our shore. So that's what we are envisioning. Okay, there are many already pilot or there are already a group of island in the UK, Orkney Island, that is being energized fully by marine renewable energy. So from offshore wind, from tidal energy, and from wave energy. So that island in the northern part of the UK is 100% energized by marine renewable energy, but mainly much of it is from the offshore wind. Okay, so other name for marine and ocean, we also call them offshore. So offshore wind with fixed or floating foundations, and we also floating solar PV, ocean renewable energy. So I've mentioned them already. So the big technology that is the big capacity of ocean renewable energy is tidal barrage. So Canada, France, and South Korea has already installations of the tidal barrage. Tidal barrage is just like a hydro electric power plant, and that uses the force of gravitation to rotate the turbine holding water. So it's different from the tidal stream. So that portion here, the others, 13.2, much of that is the tidal stream. So the tidal stream is already can already be deployed in many locations, but we also have tidal barrage that can we can also explore in the Philippines. But tidal barrage has also impact in the environment. That's what large-scale tidal barrage, the scale of 521 megawatt, being using that part, no, of the sea and the river, no, where the sea and the river meet, no. There is you can put tidal barrage there, and there that critic that tidal barrage is not that sustainable, no. Unlike tidal stream, in which you just put them under the sea in small sizes but many, and that can also maybe provide more sustainable, no, energy resource. And it's also a climate resilient technology because when there is typhoon, they are just underneath the sea, so it will not um, does not have impact, you know, for them. And also wave, the technologies for wave has not settled in yet, no. So but there is that point absorber technology in which it absorbs the motion of various waves, no, from all directions, and that is being absorbed by that technology, no, point absorber technology. And it seems that the technology um, that would be settled is leading to that, no. So but at the moment it's not yet it has not yet settled for wave, no, but for tidal in-stream we already have a technology for that. So filed patents, no? So most of the is in the R&D scale, and also tidal also, and then so that's the patents we have here. So in the center, so we are exploring tidal energy resource assessment. We have tried that in a number of sites in Mindanao, no. So 2 sites in Davao Gulf, no, in Samal, in Talikod, 1 site in Surigao, and 1 site in Tawi-Tawi. So we have an instrument, we call this an ADCP, caustic Doppler current profiler, that measures that the tidal velocity in each of the layer of the sea. So there is an instrument that measures, no, the tidal velocity from the surface going to the seabed, no. So we can really identify which part of the strait or the passage or channel in which the tidal flow is higher, no. So we need to locate that, no. So tidal energy is very site specific, local specific. So but it has many potential for energization our island communities, no. So we know our island communities, many of them don't have access to electricity, right? But we can provide them solar maybe, but also tidal energy, no. So we don't need nuclear for these island communities, no. But at the present we have all of these island communities are being energized by diesel power plants, no, unfortunately, and we all are paying for that through the universal charge, no, missionary electrification. And then there is no means that these islands will graduate from that subsidy, no, because the price for diesel will continue to increase forever, no. So but with renewable energy, it's only the upfront cost that is expensive, but through time it will reduce, no, because it has zero fuel cost, no. So it would be good that we can subsidize renewable energy in the capital cost, no, the upfront cost, but there is that graduation plan through renewable energy, because later on they will have lower cost, no. So unlike the diesel, that it would not, because it's fuel resource based. Okay, so I'll just skip some slides, no. So this just says that there are many different resource assessments, no. We call theoretical, technical, and practical. So which resource assessments are we referring to? You know? Is it the practical part, the technical part, or just the theoretical part? No. So this was the activity we had in the Pakiputan Strait in between Samal and Davao. So this is what the instrument we have, a very reliable instrument which you can predictably measure, you know, the energy production for the whole year for tidal energy. You know, so as long as you do very good modeling, you know, so you can accurately quantify the energy. So with that, unlike with solar and wind, that they are intermittent, but you can somehow approximate also the resource for solar and wind. But for tidal energy, you can like have very good confidence, no, on on the computation of your energy production for the whole year, because when the dynamics of the lunar, I mean the moon, the gravitation of the moon, and when full moon, half moon, new moon comes, and we can exactly predict when they occur. No? So they say tidal energy is the most predictable energy resource, and why not really explore that? It's just like the wind turbine, but there is added challenge for tidal energy because locations are very different from each other. No, so your mooring, your how you put the floating platform, that is where the challenge for tidal energy. So unlike solar or wind, that when you put them anywhere, it can produce. It's just almost the same case and can produce the same um, energy for the whole year, the expected energy. But for tidal energy, there's that how to say, challenge on the installation and the maintenance, no, of that floating platform and the configuration of the mooring. No? So, but again, that is where the innovation lies for tidal energy. But in terms of energy conversion system, it's already a commercially and mature technology. So this we do. So we do scan, no, the tidal velocity in each part of the strait, no, or channel, and we can identify which part there has the higher tidal velocity, no, because it also differ from one part of the channel to another because it depends on the bathymetry, no, or the topography underneath, no. So we call that bathymetry, no, the underneath the seabed topography. Okay, so here it says here the most matured is tidal range, no, because it has already it has been producing electricity in France, Canada, and South Korea. And the next one is offshore wind. Next is marine floating solar, then tidal stream, no, then wave energy, OTEC, deep ocean current, salinity gradients are still in the laboratory R&D level, no, so keep on doing studies about them so we can improve them. But matured and commercially available marine renewable energy, we already have them aside from the conventional renewable energy we have. So we already have the technology now. No, we just have to put them in place. We just have to invest on them. Okay, so there are many configurations for tidal energy. It could be jetty based. So your port can be very innovative, no? So maybe you have a jetty and each of the column of your jetty will have tidal turbines, or maybe a floating platform and also submerged or seabed mounted configuration. So tidal energy has very good potential for island communities, no, for our fisher folks, no. So if you can set up a tidal charging station somewhere on shore, no, and then that charging station can produce maybe ice, or it can, of course, can charge the batteries of the fisher folks, but can produce ice there, and the fisher folks can just get ice, no. So that would improve the lives of our fisher folks, no. So that's also a very good contribution, no, to the development, socio-economic development of peoples in the islands. Okay, so wave and tidal at first, it would the same with all the other renewables, no? Just expensive for capital cost, no, or upfront cost, but because of its zero fuel cost, it will reduce. But for diesel, for coal, any resource-based renewable energy can increase the cost through time. So here, I will skip this part, no. So these are all resource assessment stages, no. So what you do to do resource assessment, so you have to consider marine protected areas. You have to consider the economic activity in that marine space. You have to do you have to consider the bathymetry, the depths of the water, the permitting, no. So especially now that the marine energy production or ocean energy production is not yet in the consciousness, no, of our regulation, no, or our in the permitting, no. There are many permits in terms of the environmental impact of putting up a floating platform in that location. So proper permitting should be done. No, so here so many considerations in doing resource assessment, and also this guide from the European Marine Energy Center. No, so if you do if you would like to have a technology that would lead towards commercialization, this center has a thorough guide, no, for any investor. So here also like the physical boundaries for the tidal energy conversion system. So there's that clearance at the bottom. This is your rotor of your tidal energy conversion system. There is clearance of top and bottom, no? Around 5, at least 5. No? Yun. So bottom clearance 5 to 25% depth, whichever is greater. No? So maximum rotor currently limited to 20 to 25 meter. So if you have like tidal farm, so you should have you should consider the spacing, no, between the tidal turbines. No, so it's like wind farm, so you'll have tidal farm, no, small electric fans underneath your seabed, in the seabed, and these are the spacing that you need to have. No, and then you can have a small scale tidal farm, medium scale tidal farm, large scale tidal farm. Yeah. So in this, you can do energy production, no, for the whole year in consideration of tidal cycle, tidal profile. No, and then here, so this is the modeling part. So you consider what are the different forces that that impact, no, your tides. No, so here there's that model for just the moon in consideration. Here, moon and the sun. Then here in moon, sun, and other constituents. You call it constituents for there are 50 constituents, no, that you input in your modeling so that it could accurately predict, no, your tidal energy production for the whole year, no, or per day, per month, and for the whole year. Okay, there are many tools to do modeling, no, and then field study. So we can add field study, and then there is a very accurate way to quantify, you know, velocity distribution. Then use calculate power curve. No, so there is that cut in tidal velocity and cut out tidal velocity. No? So what is the minimum tidal velocity that your tidal turbine can capture? No, so it's 0.5 here, 0.5 meter per second for cut in, and 1.5 or in between 1.5.2 is the cut out. No, so our tidal velocity in the region falls in this range. No, so there is already a commercially available tidal turbines that could capture your tidal velocity, no, using the tidal range that's available in the tropics. Okay, so here you can compute the tidal or the power curve, and also power production. No? So per site, no, so it depends on the how many tidal turbines you're putting, no, so on the seabed or on the floating platform, so you can compute, no, the annual energy production. And then here, so this also velocity distribution curves and your annual energy production. Okay, so there are many methods to do available and extractable tidal energy to this equation, but I would not discuss it further with you. Okay, so these are the team we have, which we conducted, no, the 3 sites in Mindanao, no, Surigao, Davao, and Tawi-Tawi. So we did ADCP, or acoustic Doppler current profiler survey, so that we can profile the tidal velocity in these locations. I think that's all, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Enano Jr. Pagka ba Dr. Enano, kailangan may junior pa? I don't know. Dr. Enano, thank you so much. That was very enlightening and actually interesting presentation. Hindi ko alam yun eh. Yung tungkol sa tidal wave. So, yung power ng tides. Although I heard about it before, that in the Philippines, we have powerful tides, no? In specific areas. But that's all I knew. So thank you very much. Seems the operative word for the best, sasabihin nga ni Dr. Dairit, the best energy source for us. The operative words are sustainability, resiliency, safety, and cost. Siguro, no? Parang ganun, di ba, Mark?
Correct.
So anyway, before we proceed, meron tayong kailangan gawin. Di ba? That ends part one of our forum, by the way. Before we proceed to the open forum, which is part two, we invite you to turn on your cameras for a group photo. Sayang wala na si Dr. Dairit. We call on our Zoom host, Maribeth De Villa, to give the directions. Direct.
Okay. Kindly open your cam. Okay. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. Another one. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Thank you. What next? So we're going to open now the part two, where we will take all your questions and comments, but they will not be answered yet. Sa part 3 pa sila sasagutin. So, Mark, I think you have guidelines for this portion.
Yes, Miss Marie, thank you so much. Before we move on to our part 3, of course, as mentioned earlier, we have part 2, and this part 2, we have to gather all your questions. But a few reminders before we do it. First, we will gather your questions. And second, please unmute your microphone as soon as your name is called. Third, give your name, organization, school, or location. And to ask question or share a comment, you may either raise your hand to verbalize it or post your question on our comment or chat box, and I will read it for you. We will take as many questions as time permits. I think that would be all, Miss Marie.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mark. Alam mo, I expect a lot of questions kasi sa chat box wala, ang dami-dami
Exactly,
ng
Miss Marie.
comments. So I don't know how we're going to finish this. I would like to add that please make your questions brief so that we can have as many questions as possible. Okay, so let's start. Sino, who will be first to ask questions?
Alpas Pinas is raising his hand.
Okay, please. Alpha, spinach.
Hello, hi. I think that's me. I'm Alpas Pinas. I'm from Alpas Pinas. I'm JC Pagunsan from Alpas Pinas. So I'm from Quezon City. I'm in Quezon City right now. So my questions,
Alpas, okay.
yes, my questions primarily directed towards Greenpeace, especially Mr. Kevin Yu, because it seems like some of here are some of the notes earlier he mentioned about the nuclear particular first the nuclear bill, which he mentioned that it's nakulangan siya dun sa land use yung sa mga provisions, when in fact if you're gonna read the bill again, the bill is about the regulatory authority. It's not about nuclear waste or liabilities, which will be filed later on. Also, I want to ask Mr. Kevin Yu if they already made studies about the intermittency of renewables. I mean, one good example is Germany. Germany had to delay the shutting down of the last 3 nuclear reactors in Germany in order to survive winter. So where are the renewables during that time? So that's one of the questions. So okay, sorry. Let me gather my questions into three. First, intermittency of solar, wind, and other renewable sources versus nuclear energy. Second, um, what's the Greenpeace opinion about the dependence of renewable energy on fossil fuels? Because due to capacity factors, when when the sun is not shining or the wind is blowing, there's no production of electricity. So who takes up the slack for that? Of course, the fossil fuel power plants, which might be run by coal or by gas. And third, and this is one thing that I feel strongly about, is the lack of faith or trust in what Filipinos can do. I met a lot of people, engineers, workers, who already worked in nuclear power plants outside of the Philippines. Baraca Power Plant was built by Filipino engineers and Filipino laborers. If they can do it outside the Philippines, why can't we do it here? So I think that's one of the issues raised by Mr. Kevin earlier about the Filipino the mistrust, I guess, the mistrust that we have for our fellow Filipinos. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much. That was a very
Thank
long
you.
question. So anyway, I hope, Kevin, you took note of that, because you will answer that in part 3. I see many hands raised. I knew it. Oh, meron pa rin, Tessa. Sige, go ahead, Tessa.
Good afternoon. I'm Tessa Oliva of Green Convergence. I would just like Dr. Arcelias maybe to react to the comparison that si Dr. Dairit gave regarding nuclear energy and tidal energy, that we will be forever dependent on foreign suppliers, and thousands will be accumulated waste. So I'd like a reaction on that. And then maybe a question for Dr. Somano. When we have these tidal facilities, will they be affected by storm surges and tsunamis? Okay, so those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mark, do you see any other raised hands? Mark?
Another question. Maybe I can read one of the questions from our chat box. There's so many, but I think I can read this one. The question is from Mr. Ramil Sarga of MCGS. The question also is how much of the energy produced, or how much the produced energy, electricity, are wasted by the consumer. In the end, there might be a big discrepancy between energy produced to energy that was used legally, properly, and morally. I think everyone can answer to that or could comment on that question. And some of the questions here were already answered in the chat box. Maybe we can go back to our plenary or the main
Yes, I think there are some questions. There are some hands raised. We have
Congressman
more, but can we have
Miss Gail?
others?
Miss Gail po.
Miss Gail?
Yes. Oh, thank you.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gail Certeza. I'm part of the group Alpas Pinas. So we are a nuclear energy advocacy group. So my question is just one and only one. Solar and wind is being positioned as the savior of us. And if that were true, I would really love that, because I used to work in Greenpeace before. But the thing that's not being said is solar and wind is intermittent. Pag gabi, wala tayong solar energy. Pag walang hangin, wala tayong wind energy. And every time, that's what you call intermittency. So when there's no light and there's no wind, somebody has to take over. And all over the world, what takes over is coal, gas, and oil. And coal, gas, and oil is destroying our world. Alam na natin lahat yon. That's why we have climate change. You only have two choices for base load, coal oil and gas versus nuclear. And the only one that does not have carbon emission is nuclear. Yes, there are storage solutions, but the storage solutions are not, it cannot handle megacities. Imagine Metro Manila. Gaano kalaking solar farm ang ating kailangan para to power Cubao? 'Di ba? How many hectares of solar and wind do we need? I think that's the thing that they need to tell us. Of course, I would love for solar and wind to be the answer. But it has to be said, it has to be explained to us. You cannot just diss nuclear and not say how solar and wind is gonna save us. So I would love for the speaker of Greenpeace to please tell us, how do we generate enough power from solar and wind to power our mega cities like Metro Manila? Because if there is an answer to that, then that would be really wonderful, right? But they should not hide behind the fact that every time you push solar and wind, kakambal nun is coal, oil, and gas. Kasi yun ang tumatakbo sa gabi. At yun ang tumatakbo sa mga araw na walang hangin at walang, pag may bagyo tayo, walang solar. I think it should be discussed that way. You cannot uncouple it from the fact that if we use so much solar and wind, we are going to use...
Okay, thank you very much. That's not a question anymore.
Oh, I'm sorry. So the question
Please
is...
do not editorialize. Just
I'm
ask
so
a
sorry. Yes,
question.
I'm so sorry. So my question is, what is the base load? What is the base
Okay.
load?
Yes,
when
thank you very
we use
much.
solar and gas?
Because
Ma'am, I'm so sorry. I was
if
just...
everyone does this, we
Thank
will
you.
never end.
I know. I'm
It will
sorry.
be 10
Thank you,
up.
thank you, thank you.
I'm
Thank you so
sorry to
much.
cut you too,
No,
but
no problem.
I have
Thank
to. I needed to do that.
It's okay.
Thank
Thank
you
you so
very
much.
much.
Sorry for that. Thank
So,
you.
so Kevin, there you go. That's for you again.
Dr. Galang will ask questions.
Yes, Dr. Galang now.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes. Thank you to all the speakers who are really very informative in their presentations. I have several questions. Okay, the first is for Dr. Arcilia. Yeah, I'm glad you have the perspective that you're not really pushing nuclear as the power, but maybe just with the other sources. But mine is really more about the technology. What I know, and this was also confirmed, well, this was given to us when I was on a tour with my husband on energy facilities in the US, that, the adage, anything can happen, if anything can happen, it will happen. And therefore, nuclear plants have to have 7 layers of protection or for safety, so that in order to make sure that there will be no accident. I guess that's why nuclear plants are big, because they need those 7 layers. I don't know exactly what those 7 layers are. I suppose lead is one, concrete is one, several meters, the big volume of air in the nuclear buildings. I don't know what are the other layers of protection, but how can we have 7 layers of protection in small modular reactors? That's one. Number 2, I know that to have a sustained chain reaction, you have to have a critical mass. I just Googled the critical mass, and it's about what, 7 pounds? How much bigger or how much small? You have to have 7, anyway, that critical mass, no? For a sustained nuclear chain reaction. How big are the cores in the big nuclear power plants, and how small is the core for the modular reactors? Okay, those are my questions for Dr. Arcilia. I have one for Dr. Nanano. Thank you for your very scientific work. Since we're in the environment, I would like to know if the structures might interfere with fish nesting sites, with fish migration, or movement in the ocean. So do you include that in your research? For Kevin, I know that the intermittency is issue for renewables like wind and solar. What about geothermal? Do we have enough for the base load? Do you have enough geothermal for the base load, and then the wind and solar for complementary? And also, what about smart grids? Meaning, you may have a shortage of wind in one place, but you have more wind in another place, and solar, no solar in one, and there's some smart grids or smart grids which will combine the different sources so that together they will assure the country of power and everywhere. That's one. But then also, since we are an islandic country, how feasible it is that most of our islands can be autonomous. Of course, for big cities, we need big resources, but our national grid now tries to energize the whole country in one or several grids. But if each island can have its own autonomous solar or tidal or wind, it will really lighten the demand for the national grid. So have there been studies on that, Kevin, for the Philippines? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gala. I hope the speakers were able to jot down all those questions. I believe Congressman Mark is also raising his hand virtually. Congressman Mark, and then to be followed by Dr. Cora Claudio. I think while waiting for Congressman Mark, Dr. Cora, go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. Unfortunately, I missed all the presentations because I was held up in some tasks, no? But let me just comment based on what I have heard during this open forum when it started. First is that we know we're all in a crisis. Now, why are we looking at nuclear power plants? The proponent of these small nuclear reactors, you saw that picture, that proposed being the Philippines being one of their major potential users, will have their operating system in 2031 yet. So I suggest that we consider, and Secretary Popo Lutilla has already done so, identified energy efficiency is the immediate solution to our problems. Somebody asked, what do we do in Metro Manila? Energy efficiency, because there is much wastage as of now. So we may be able to come up with something equivalent to a big power plant if we will focus on energy efficiency immediately. Now, in considering any technology, whether it is for energy or other things, I think we must first ask, what are we as a country? As a country, we are a maritime and archipelagic nation that is very tectonically active. And we have heard, we have watched all of these problems that started with earthquakes, right? Whether on land or in water. Why are we trying to get something that will give us such significant risk? Okay. Now, somebody mentioned the weaknesses of solar. First is when we are considering something, we have to assess what capital sources we have. There are at least 3 types of capital resources. One that is measured by GDP, products and services, including technologies. What do we have going on for nuclear for us? Nothing. Number 2 is human capital. We have trained some people, but we have lost many of them already. They have shifted to other careers. So we don't have much. Number 3 is natural capital. We don't have anything. I heard that we have radioactive uranium. Well, whenever you test water, you can get some metallic compounds there, but not necessarily in commercial quantity. And I have asked my colleagues in the marine science field. They say we don't have enough. So let's look at what we have. We have sun, we have wind, we have water, which we have not really optimally and sustainably used because we are just using hydro mainly. There are many others because we have different types of water. And then we have geothermal. There are weaknesses. That's true. I agree with that. But for example, for solar, this issue of not having sun during the day, that's why we have storage technology. We can already store, okay? We have many other areas where research is needed to be done, and we have limited R&D resources. So I submit that we should not use that for nuclear. Not even a centavo of it, which is, I think, is a waste of time. We have to focus on the research areas: storage, cell, panel, waste. There are others, but those are major ones that other countries are looking at. Now, we have to look also at what other countries that are leading in technology innovation are doing. Germany just shut down its last 2 nuclear power plants, and Israel, which is a leader in technology innovation, does not have even 1 nuclear power plant. It has nuclear reactors, but they use it for limited research, and people do not want nuclear power plant. And what gives us the courage to do it?
No, Cora, excuse me.
Lastly, I just want you to know that I stand on good technical ground when I say this, because my doctoral study in engineering economic systems, the coursework was focused on renewables, which was then called non-conventional, and my doctoral thesis is a nuclear power plant that the U.S. Electric Power Research Institute, which is the research arm of electric utilities in the U.S., funded.
Okay. Thank you so much for that, Cora. I think we should have gotten you as a speaker. Anyway, we were asking for questions, and any questions from our other participants?
I think Congressman Mark Wangko is also raising his hand. Congressman,
yes, go ahead.
Yes, if I could just make comments na lang without question, kasi ganun din naman yung iba na anti-nuclear dyan. Ano? Kanina sabi ng Greenpeace, i-democratize daw. Just to give you some context, no? Ang isang 1 horsepower aircon na patakbuhin ng 10 hours a day straight, we need to buy greater than 250,000 pesos worth of lead acid batteries every 3 years. Is that a practical or economic solution? I don't think so. Now imagine scaling that up to power the entire city. I think it's an economic impossibility. Sinabi po ng Greenpeace ang decommissioning cost, waste cost, regulation, hindi kasali. Kasali po yan sa bill. 6 centavos per kilowatt hour sa decommissioning, 6 centavos for waste, 2 centavos for regulation collected over the entire life of the nuclear power plant. So these are billions of pesos prepaid for these activities. These costs are covered and will not be passed on to future generations. Life of wind and solar plant, you need to rebuild them every 30 years compared to nuclears every 80 years. So pag nabayaran na ang puhunan, ang mura na ng nuclear power, nasa 1 peso and 30 centavos per kilowatt hour. Kasali na po dyan yung fuel, yung decommissioning, yung waste, yung regulation. So mali po ang misleading po ang mga statements ni Greenpeace. BNPP was not made to run. Surely, if it were made to run, then by now we would not have the 55% coal generating capacity, which is over what, 12,000 megawatts that we have today. And there would be no energy crisis right now because nuclear for every 1,000 megawatts avoids $1 billion every year of imported fossil fuels. Wala po yan. Ang magiging kapalit po nun, $20 to $30 million lang. So ang laki po ng diferensya sa katas OFW na lumalabas sa bansa natin na pinaghirapan ng ating mga kamag-anak kitain, sinusunog lang natin po as fuel. Yung Lazard po posted LCOE numbers. They recently posted a new set of numbers which covered the cost of addressing intermittency. Bakit hindi nyo po pinost yan, Greenpeace? That is already deception. Pinost kasi ng ano. So, nuclear waste po is tiny. Ang liit lang po ng ating pinag-uusapan. Sinabi ni Kaloy Arcilla kanina, isang jeepney, 26 na pirasong nuclear assembly every year. You will have hundreds of millions of pesos to dispose of that in deep geological isolation. Bakit ba ayaw niyong tanggapin na may solusyon to getting rid of nuclear waste? So that is geological isolation. It is attention and cost-free finality forever. But why do we want to waste that? It has 20 times reusability in Generation 4 reactors, a great national wealth that we ought to bequeath to our children. But if we want to be stupid about it and waste it, put it in a hole and bury it 2 kilometers deep. So, yung BGC daw 200 hectares at kailangan daw ng bill ng low and intermediate waste disposition site. Paano po ang existing ngayon na low and intermediate waste disposition na kailangan ng ating mga hospital, industrial centers, and other businesses? Ano, pakalat-kalat na lang yan. Hindi na baling magkaroon ng aksidente sa junkyard dahil binuksan ang isang gamma machine na dating nasa ospital. Marami pong mamamatay kapag ganyan. Bakit 200 hectares? Kasi po buffer yan. Ang 200 hectares po is 1.4 kilometers by 1.4 kilometers. So 600 meters lang ang distansya hanggang sa gilid from the central point kahit gagamit lang po tayo ng 4 hectares. Yun po ang purpose. Unclassified lands po ang ating hinahanap. Wala pa po kaming na-draft na liability law. Basan nakuha ni Greenpeace yung gagamitin sa liability. So we have just finished a workshop conducted by the IAEA on nuclear liability law. So gagawin po natin yan. Minimum of 350 million SDRs ang liability ng nuclear plant na pribado. $1 million po a year ang premium po niyan. Gustong-gusto po ng insurance industry ang nuclear power dahil halos never po silang nagbabayad dahil wala pong mga aksidente. So ganun po ka-safe ang nuclear plant. Ang
Okay,
Japan po,
Congressman,
ang Japan po, last point
I'm sorry, I have to cut you now because we have to give time for our speakers to answer all the questions.
Ma'am, last point. Japan, $30 billion a year additional fossil fuel import nung sinara nila ang lahat ng nuclear plant nila. 11 years na po, 330 billion na. Eh yung mga dekadang nauna, ilan ang kayamanan na naipon ni Japan dahil may nuclear power sila. So yun po ang mga konteksto na kung paano po.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And now, you know, we really have to stop taking in questions because the speakers have to have time to answer. It's not fair not to give them enough time. Right? To answer kasi kailangan nilang makasagot.
Nuclear. Hindi po yata patas ang forum po ninyo.
Ay nako, hindi po naman nagpe-present lang ng alternatives, no? Hindi naman anti. Parang masyado naman yung anti, di ba? Parang hindi ko naman nakita yung anti, no? I think this is like red tagging, no? Medyo exaggerated yung anti. So anyway, let's give a chance to the speakers to answer. It's only fair. You don't give questions and not give a chance for them to answer. Okay?
I think before we move on, Ms. Marie, to our party, may I remind everyone if you want to get your e-certificate?
Oh yes, that's right. We might forget our reminders.
If you want to request an e-certificate of participation, here are the requirements for its issuance. Number one, the participant must have been actually present in the forum and not merely pre-registered. Second is the participant must submit a duly accomplished evaluation form, which will be posted on our chat box by GC Secretariat.
That's right. Look for that evaluation form. It will be posted in the chat box. Thank you very much. We need your evaluation. So now we move to the part 3, where we will give a chance to our resource persons to answer the questions posted to them. Yes, who will start? I think yung marami.
And hello, magandang hapon po sa lahat. And thank you everyone for the feedback. Talagang narinig niyo po. Talagang it just shows that we need to have a thorough discussion, no, in terms of the
Kevin, can you speak louder?
Hello?
Can you speak louder? You were also a bit your audio was a bit weak when you were presenting.
I see. So can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yes?
It's
Okay.
better, yes.
Yeah, so well, obviously, we need more space to discuss deeply nuclear energy in the country, no. So we have dito sa sa process to, we have seen or we have heard yung benefits of nuclear, and also our analysis no, in terms of what are our issues and concerns about nuclear energy. I think we need to continue this discussion. Definitely agree with the Congressman Mark Coangco that we need to put all datas out there, no. So since this is a limited space, no, so hindi rin namin na provide lahat ng information, but what we want to highlight are some of the important aspect of why we should be critical, no, on all forms of technology. Yes. So to answer, to try ko isa-isa, no, so I'll just address yung nauna, si Alpas JC. Yeah. So yeah, in relation to sa nuclear bill, it's definitely, it provides the regulatory authority, yung PhilAtM. So I think it has many options of that. And it provides different plans on it. But I think it should be stipulated what will be the content of some of the plants. And yun yung isa nakita namin ng mga problems that dapat malinaw na nakasaad na dun sa draft bill in itself. Yung pinaka-importanting elemento nung HB 7049, no, ito yung current bill, it also provides, no, sinasabing it provides the legal framework on the utilization of nuclear energy. That's why kung ganun yung magiging isa sa mga objectives niya, dapat everything should be included, stated within those within that bill as it is. Okay, so going to the second question in terms of intermittency, for us, we don't have recent data on in terms of yung available energy for renewable energy. But what we encountered, I believe it's one group, I think it's Institute for Climate and Sustainable Cities. It provided how renewable energy sources, particularly solar, provided energy when we need it. If you remember noong 2020, nagkaroon tayo ng yellow and red alert uli noong mga panahon na yun. Dahil nga may pumalya na mga coal plant, I think some gas plants din. And it shows on that study na ang sumalo nung energy na hindi na provide ng mga planta na yun ay actually solar and some renewable energy sources, and provided really competitive prices during that time. So as it is, renewable energy is tested and we've been utilizing it, providing cheaper electricity for our grid, no, sa ngayon. So, but definitely I think that's an important point na dapat makita rin natin yung current status, no, nung all forms of energy. At yun yung isang concern about nuclear energy. Although we have estimates, the one that we were raising a while ago, an important concern is that we don't know the actual cost, no, or yung pricing in terms of how will nuclear perform, no? Paano ba yung magiging computation niya in the end sa ating grid, no? So dahil nga maraming kailangan i-factor in diyan. Na-mention ni Congressman Mark Huang kanina yung additional funds, no? So hindi ko na siya in-include dito kasi maiksi yung presentation. So it's 0.12 kasi dalawang funds yun eh. It's the decommissioning fund and there's another fund, no? So it's a total of 0.12 per kilowatt hour generated from electricity coming from nuclear. So kanina ipapataw yun, di ba? So that's an additional cost.
Excuse me, Kevin. Sorry, but I think you're not answering the question. The question is, how about if you have data intermittency? Kasi I don't
Yes,
think.
we don't have. I answered the
Yeah,
question.
yeah. So exactly. So what my point?
Excuse me, hello. Please let him finish.
Okay, then would I be allowed to rebut? Because he's making entirely
If we
new
have
argument
time,
from my question.
yes, but already you have taken so much time, and we're not going to be here forever. No, we are.
Yes,
Our
then
time
I'm
is
hoping that
limited.
the speaker would limit himself to answering my questions and not making new arguments far from what I'm asking.
He was referring to another question
Thank you.
already, not to yours
Can
anymore.
I just respond to that? I answered clearly that we don't have the data that you are looking for, but what we know is that renewable energy can provide electricity when we need it.
Then how can we make that assumption if we don't have the data? I mean, that's one thing that I kind of noticed is that we're making
This is what I'm trying to avoid.
Statement.
We should not debate here. But,
we should not, but I think it's the responsibility of the speaker to be sure about the data that he
and another opinion,
is sprouting.
And the participants will weigh the different opinions. Okay, we don't have time for debates because there are so many other questions that need to be answered. I'm sorry.
Mr. Kevin, go ahead.
Other questions are important too, not just yours.
Should I continue?
Sure.
Yes, go ahead.
All right. So in terms of our concern, in terms of our track record, we're looking at the track record of the Philippines in terms of responding to disasters. So that's why we cited yung Smart Copper incident and the current oil spill, no. So hindi tayo demand, no, ng efficiently when there's disasters that are happening, especially kung mayroong mga parties involved. So that's why yun yung mga examples that we provided. what we're actually pushing is yung scalability of renewable energy. So the trust that we are when we are promoting renewable energy is actually for the Filipinos. We're not saying that we mistrust Filipinos. We're mistrusting the experts, the engineers, no. But in terms of pushing, no, for renewable energy, it also we are promoting actually our scale, our small medium enterprise, kasi ang renewable energy can have ano na, it's a business by communities, no. So if you go in different cities, marami nang nagbebenta niyan. I think for nuclear it cannot be possible as of the moment, and it can be utilized uh for every household. So I think that's a wrong assertion for in saying that we're promoting mistrust, no, for Filipinos. Going to the next question, Miss Gail Certeza. Yes, hello, good day. Good to know na isa kang volunteer. Yeah, as you mentioned a while ago. Yeah, I think yung sa base load, no. So, yung isang common misconception then that when we talk about solar, wind, and in this case hydro, we're pushing for base load energy because there's so many forms of renewable energy, no. In terms of pushing for renewable energy, actually what we're looking for is both on grid and off grid, no. So for off grid, that means that large scale solar power plants can provide electricity when we need it. And I think yung isang pinaka-importante doon is that when ang ating consumption kasi sa Pilipinas, ano siya, nagpi-peak siya by 3 p.m. no. That's a time when we have electricity coming from solar, or in some cases wind energy. So I think that's very ideal, and we're not also promoting just one type of source of energy. We're looking at a mix of renewable energy sources for the Philippines, no. And at the same time providing that opportunity, no, to give power back to the people, no. So na-mention ni Dr. Carlos Arcilla kanina yung mga oligarchs, no. So the oligarchs control the electricity ngayon, the fossil fuel industry. The renewable energy have the option to provide energy to the people. So I think yun yung isang dapat natin makita, na malaking opportunity for renewable energy na hindi na for now sa nuclear hindi pa natin makita. And I believe for new scale, ang kausap ng new scale sa Pilipinas si Enrique Razon, no. So big businesses are looking into nuclear because as I mentioned earlier, privatize ang ating energy sector. That means big players will have a better opportunity to provide electricity. Kay Dr. Nina Galang, in terms of geothermal, we don't have the data right now in terms of if it can provide the needed baseload energy. But as mentioned kanina ni Dr. Arcilla, it is providing energy at a baseload level. Pero in terms of can we expand it, it's a question that we need to address in the future, no. Because it also have some problems ang geothermal, because you need to clear even in some cases ancestral lands and even forests, no. So all forms of energy sources have environmental impact. We need to look at ano yung pinaka sustainable, manageable ang impact, and can have a small footprint in the immediate and long term timeline. Si Dr. Cora, she had a lot of statement, but I would just like to agree na in terms of energy efficiency, I think that's one of a very important solution. I think we have a bill on it right now, and we need to fully implement it because right now yun nga, maraming energy na nasasayang, and I think we need to have mitigating efforts, no, to really manage our consumption. Kasi if we shift to renewable energy and then we still have ganun pa rin consumption natin, or even if we shift to nuclear and we still have the same form of consumption, tataas pa rin ang ating pangangailangan in the future. Kay Congressman Mark Wangko, magandang hapon po muli. In terms of scaling up, yes, isa yun, no? So yung in terms of electricity, yes, isa siya sa problem. But there again, there are many forms of solar that can be on grid and off grid, no? So batteries definitely is a concern that needs to be addressed in the future. But technology development and technology is addressing some of those problems. Similar to nuclear. So sa nuclear nagkakaroon ng small modular reactor, but again we need to test those assumptions along the way, no. And sa decommissioning cost, I think na-mention ko na yung kanina na yung additional na 12 peso per kilowatt hour. But what I was trying to point out in my presentation is that it should be included in terms of what are the actual cost of a nuclear facility, no. So ngayon kasi we have a budget for it, but in terms of yung magkano ba yung halaga na kailangan para i-decommission ang isang planta, hindi pa natin nakita yan. And I've provided some examples to show kung just to give you an idea ano yung cost, no, of the decommissioning nuclear power plants in other countries, no. So I believe we're not we're not misleading anyone in here, but we're providing all the information that that the people need, no. So for the longest time kasi we haven't heard, no, about what are the concerns and problems in terms of nuclear. And I think this is one of the few spaces that we can provide that and publicize that to the Filipino people. Do sa ano in terms dun sa 200 hectares, yes, kasama siya dun sa bill, no. And yung included sa bill is not only nuclear energy but also the use of other nuclear technology as mentioned by Congressman Mark Wangko. But the concern there is that it will require space as well, no. So kasi previously the assertions before is that power plant lang ang dapat tignan. Pero meron pang waste sites, no, itong pinopropose under the bill na kakailanganin para ma-manage yung mga waste na ito sa ngayon. In terms dun sa liability clause, we've seen the current bill as it is at meron nga siyang reference dun sa 1968 law, and you mention yung figures. I think that should be included in the current bill as it is, no. But again, I think as I've shown a while ago, that the cost can be always get higher in terms of managing nuclear impact. So doon po kami na nababahala na when we encounter incidents or managing waste facilities, global trends have shown, no, na talagang pataas ang gastos dito with no end in sight. So yun yung dapat natin tingnan na it's a long-term commitment, not only by this generation but by succeeding generation, no, na mamomroblema, magbabayad at magmamanage ng ganitong type of technologies. So I think in terms of yes, sige, yun lang po yung mga questions. So yeah, I'll pass it on to Dr. Nelson. Yes, thank you.
I think let's have Dr. Arcilia.
Thank you. Akala ko tapos na eh. Anyway. So do I have time to answer?
There were questions for you, right?
Yeah,
yes.
I know. I hope you give me time, more or less kahit na half lang doon sa binigay sa Greenpeace. Okay, let's answer the questions one by one. First, regarding geothermal, I'm a geologist, professor of geology at UP Diliman. Geothermal is a very good base load. And in fact, it provides 17% of our energy. And, if we had more geothermal, I wouldn't even bat for nuclear. The problem is we have maximized the dead volcanoes that supply geothermal. Yun po yung basic niyan. So hindi na pwedeng i-max, nakamax na tayo doon. Okay? But in terms of the renewables, it is actually one of the best renewables. No? But unfortunately, we don't have. Indonesia will overtake us in that respect. And then yung question po on the layers of protection of nuclear power plants, 7 layers, it's more than, this is called defense in design, defense in depth. How do you protect nuclear power plants? We have more than 60 years experience. So, and the fact that you have 450 nuclear power plants, actually, if you add the submarines, siguro po almost 1,000 operating, simpling systems, very few accidents, most of them controlled. So that's why there are risks, but you have studied it, and that's just a fact. You don't have to believe me. Just check yung INES na sa IAEA to find out the number of accidents. Now, why are small modular reactors safer by design? Number one, they will only be 2 meters yung fuel pot. That was one of the questions. It will be underground. It will be walk away, meaning if there's an accident, you don't need an operator. It will shut down by itself. It's gravity driven, so you don't need external power. And that is the consequence of doing research on this. So yun po, we don't, it's like this. I mean, you know how many plane crashes happen? Why do we still ride airplanes? Even if plane crashes happen, because they are so few plane crashes, because every accident you study and then you don't repeat it anymore. That's my answer to this. There's an engineering solution once you've studied the problem. For SMRs, that's been studied. By the way, speaking of which, 100 meters from up, I have an active nuclear reactor, a small it's a research reactor, but it has fuel. Yung itlog po na malapit dito sa UP, no? You know, it's been here for 60 years. Bakit po may itlog? Yung itlog is the containment structure. There's an accident, it will be contained there, you know? So am I afraid coming here every day? I'm less than 100 meters from a research reactor, and the fuel of that reactor is 10 times richer than a nuclear power plant. We know it's safe, that's why we are here, and I mean it. I mean, you know, it's me. I'm the one closest to this. Kung may mangyayari dyan, ako yung una na madadali. No? So, ganun po. And then, no, we didn't really, yung sa tidal at saka yung sa, sa New, that's what I'm talking about. I love the tidal hypothesis. I mean, Dr. Dairit is a fantastic scientist. But we should not make one versus the other. Okay, one issue kasi with the tidal, we've had this tidal for more than 50, 60 years. Meron bang plantang tidal na sa Pilipinas? Wala eh. Why is that? And what country has tidal as a significant source of its power requirements? I really fully agree we should develop it, but at what cost? And how much power will it provide? Lahat tayo gusto mag-Facebook, mag-TikTok sa gabi. Yeah, so we need power for that. No, so yun po yung ano. So again, I'm glad that this session is here. Let's not pit nuclear versus renewable, because at the end of this, we want power. We want manufacturing. I was here in the 80s when or partly here because I was studying in the US also when there were 10 to 12-hour brownouts. Consequence of shutting down the nuclear plant. Okay. So we cannot have a repeat of that. No? If renewables can deliver it, fantastic. Walang problema. But if it cannot, we should be open that some other sources can come in. And as I said, it's not me, it's the IPCC has said it. The United Nations has said, if you don't consider nuclear, you cannot achieve the climate goals. That is just the basic truth of the reality. You cannot. Yun po kasi because of what I said, the capacity factor, that's a 30% maximum, hindi niya kaya. And I think that's all. So thank you for giving us a chance to talk. I learned, I took notes, and I'm happy that I was invited. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You know, this is a very welcome discussion.
Dr. Enano will answer.
Yes.
We have one more speaker.
We have one more speaker, yes. Dr. Enano. Where's Dr. Enano? Dr. Enano, is he still here?
I think he got disconnected kasi his internet earlier was really poor.
Oo nga, sabi nga niya, di ba? Baka he got disconnected. Sayang, kasi may questions for him, di ba? Kasi it's a tidal.
Okay, let's proceed.
Okay, so anyway, it's really time, actually. What time is it? Yes, actually, we should have ended 8 minutes ago. So, yes, go ahead, Mark. Let's proceed.
All right, moving on to our closing remarks. Let us welcome the ESI Miriam College VP and for Green Convergence. Please welcome Sister Marvy Misolas, MM.
Marvy, are you, is your mic on? We can't hear you.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay,
So thank you very much, Mark, and to all our presenters. I like all the science-based facts that you presented to us participants. Listening to everyone, I would like to offer a few thoughts that all of us might want to ponder, no matter what side we are. I think what came to my mind with all the discussion is about the precautionary principle. It is the principle that enables decision maker to adopt precautionary measures when scientific evidence about an environmental or human health hazard is uncertain at a high stakes. And this is true with nuclear energy. We must look at the issues of transition to low carbon economy in relation to the renewable energy in terms of environmental security, to look into its aspect of peace, national security, and human rights. We must build on abundance of natural resources in the Philippines and the availability of tried and studied technology. We have wind, sun, water, tidal, and geothermal. The issue of nuclear waste is an ecological justice and intergenerational justice. Unless we are able to answer that, then we go back to the precautionary principle. So the issue of energy is not an own problem to be solved on the supply side, but also by us who are on the demand side. In this period of climate emergency, we must shift. Humans must shift to a safe operating space. When we think of solutions to the Philippine energy security, we must take into consideration the impacts on the environment, on the different communities, and impacts to nature in general and the next generation. Greed must not take over in the transition to low carbon economy. Last, let us be reminded that Philippines are signatories to different conventions related to nuclear and radioactive materials. In 1998, the Philippines signed the Joint Convention on the Safety of Spent Fuel Management and Radioactive Waste Management. Next, the Philippines Safeguards Agreement with the IAEA under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, entered into force in 1974, and additional protocol in February 2010. And lastly, even according to Department of Energy, nuclear energy negative perception is prevalent to us Filipinos. We must look into all this. So I hope that this small space of dialogue that we had today can help us to dig deeper into the real issue. And we are in a climate emergency. So thank you very much for having me, and thank you very much to Green Convergence and all our presenters. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sister Marvy. Thank you. That was some discussion, very, very vigorous and, when something controversial is out there, we really need to use not just our brain, but our hearts. Mark, we have to say goodbye. You go
Correct.
first.
Correct, Miss Marie, and I think much has been said and much has been discussed. I totally agree with one of our speakers that maybe this webinar might be too small and too short for us. I think if time will allow us and resources would allow us, we can have an overshoot seminar or webinar for this, for us to be able to really discern and decipher the pros and cons, the nuclear energy and the other renewable energy for our country. And I think that would be all on our side. Please like our Facebook page, Lasalle Institute for the Environment, and of course, the Facebook page of Green Convergence.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mark. And yes, it seems that we need to discuss this some more, to really settle it in our minds and in our hearts. So maybe we will have back back sessions for this one. Okay. I would like to thank Dr. Carlo Arcilia. Thank you very much for joining us today and giving us your information that you did. Thank you very much, Kevin, you, and also Dr. Nelson Enano Jr. and Dr. Fabian Dairit. Toby, thank you very much. Also, the participants, thank you for joining us. Please join us every third Friday of the month. As you can see, our discussions are always so intriguing. The next Kamayan will be on June 16, and I hope to see you there. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye. God bless.
Bye.
Bye-bye.